Good evening. As we gather here at the beginning of summer, a time of growth, renewal, and reflection, let us pause for a moment of gratitude. We give thanks for the opportunity to serve our community, to listen with open minds, and to lead with wisdom and compassion. May we approach our duties tonight with clarity, patience, and purpose. As the days grow longer and the world around us blossoms with new life, may we be inspired to plant seeds of unity, progress, and peace in our city. May our decisions reflect fairness and integrity, and may we never forget that the heart of the governance lies in the service of others. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Denise, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Shaw, Gulick, Neese,
Present.
Owen,
Here.
Rogers,
Here.
Kennedy,
Here.
Aspenlighter,
Present online.
Yep, I'm here.
Tidswell,
Here.
Boyette, Repsis, Mayor Cole.
Here. Council, our first order of business are minutes. Let's handle these separately because there are some changes to our March 24th minutes. You received today an email describing some changes from Councilmember Neese, concurred in by our clerk, Denise. So, Councilmember Neese, I'll just describe those if those okay from your email. So in the revised version of the minutes that you received this afternoon, you'll see that there's language clarifying that items 1C and 1D were removed by vote from the agenda that evening. And then secondly, you'll see on top of page 5, there was some extra language in there relating to the ultimate vote on the items that were not separated, and that has just been removed because that was just distractions. So those changes have already been made, and so any motion should take into account those changes. Councilmember Neese, I'm going to give this to you, and if I've described your changes accurately, or if you want to add to it, but would you make the appropriate motion?
Sure, Mayor. I'll make a motion to approve the March 24th, 2025 minutes as corrections were submitted to the clerk, and the clerk concurred in those corrections, which were emailed to the council for their review.
Very good. Thank you. Second by Councilmember Gulick. Is there any discussion? Okay, again, thank you, Councilmember Neese, for catching those. If in favor of the motion for approval with those amendments, March 24th minutes, please say aye.
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 If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Is there a motion or any changes to our April 14th minutes? Councilmember Neese.
I'll make a motion to approve the April 14th minutes as submitted.
Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Rogers. If in favor or any discussion? Seeing none, if in favor of the motion for approval, April 14th minutes as drafted, please say aye.
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 If opposed, nay. Motion passes. Council courtesies tonight. We do have some special guests with us tonight. We want to start there. We're privileged to have with us the Billings All-Star Gyms team, the Riot, who are the All-Star World Championship title winners in the U17 division from the World Championship in Orlando, Florida. And Councilmember Aspenlighter called their accomplishments to our attention, and we are very much in his we appreciate that. And we understand that they edged out a team from the United Kingdom to win the World Championship title. And we're not sure if anybody from Billings or Montana has ever won anything like this. They're shaking their heads. So congratulations. Let's ask their coaches to come up and bring the whole crowd up. Just come to the microphone, and then in a second we'll ask if you would be willing to pose with us, because we really want to be associated with celebrities like you. So coaches, tell us a little bit.
My name is Coach Aaron O'Leary, and is that good? Okay, my name is Coach Aaron O'Leary, and this is Billings All-Stars. The team is called Royalty, and they are a U17 Level 2 team. And yeah, this is the first time in Montana history that any team in Montana has ever taken first place at this World Championship competition. And we're just really proud of their accomplishments and how hard they worked this year. And we're really grateful to be here. So thank you for having us.
It's our privilege. Would you be willing to stand for a picture with us so that we can get our faces with you? Yeah, why don't you just come up right in front here? And council, why don't everybody kind of move in so that we're... Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, if maybe it would be great for the community that's watching if the girls could step up to the microphone and introduce themselves and which school they go to. Billings?
That'd be great. So, girls, why don't you go ahead and do that? Just take either microphone and just put your mouth pretty close to the microphone and speak loudly and tell us your name and what school you go to. Go ahead.
My name is Parker Hoynes, and I go to Meadowlark Elementary School.
Great.
My name is Kaylee Treviso, and I go to Billings Senior High School.
My name is Miley Quillis, and I go to Lockwood Middle School.
My name is Jace McElroy, and I go to Billings Senior High.
And you can move the microphone up or down as you need it.
My name is Brooke Elner, and I go to St. Francis.
My name is Maggie Robinson, and I go to Lockwood Middle School.
My name is Royce Navziger, and I go to Riverside Middle School.
My name is Remy Martin, and I go to St. Francis. My name is Valentina Rivera, and I go to St. Francis.
I'm Kyra Ann Johnston, and I'm homeschooled.
I'm Ella Hansen, and I go to Lockwood High School.
My name's Teddy Cattermas, and I go to St. Francis.
My name's Macy Helmbrecht, and I go to Skyview High School.
My name's Emma Treglone, and I go to Will James Middle School.
I'm Coach Peyton Wagner, and I go to the University of Montana.
Hey. Again, congratulations, girls. Your community is proud from all over Billings and Lockwood, all these schools. And thank you again, Councilor Rasmussen, for calling their accomplishments to our attention. Thanks again. Thanks, guys. Another council courtesy this evening. I just wanted to call out the crew from New Life Church and others who have organized the Bible reading marathon that kicked off this morning. For many, many years, they read the Bible over Billings for the next 4 days, culminating in the National Day of Prayer on Thursday. 24 hours a day for 4 days straight. So thank you. And other courtesies this evening. Councilmember Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to briefly note for all my other council members in the community that Saturday was commencement ceremonies at Rocky Mountain College, at which our own Billings Police Chief Rich St. John received an honorary doctorate of public service for his commitment to the community. He has served as chair of the Board of Trustees for the last 2 years. I'm very fortunate to sit on that board as well and have watched his leadership in steering that flagship institution for our community. So Chief St. John isn't here, but I did want to recognize his accomplishment.
Thank you for doing that. Congratulations, Chief. Or do we now have to call him Dr. Chief or Dr. St. John or, okay, something. All right, very good. Other council courtesies. Councilmember Rogers.
I just wanted to mention, in case you guys didn't, and you're driving around this weekend, suddenly were shocked at how beautiful and sparkling Billings was, because Bright and Beautiful sent literally hundreds of volunteers all over the city on Saturday for several hours, hitting parks and roadways and parking lots, and they just did a fabulous job. So thank you, Bright and Beautiful.
Absolutely, thank you. Other council courtesies? Any other courtesies? Don't see any, so we will move on to proclamations. We have two this evening. The first is in recognition of National Therapy Animal Day. Whereas there are thousands of pet partners, therapy animals teams serving in the communities all around the United States. And whereas Pet Partners has designated April 30 as National Therapy Animal Day. And whereas scientific research shows that interacting with therapy animals can reduce stress, relieve depression, slow heart rate, lower blood pressure, and strengthen the immune system. And whereas therapy animal teams in the city of Billings play an essential role in improving human health and well-being through the human-animal bond. And whereas therapy animal teams interact with a variety of people in our community, including veterans, seniors, patients, students, and those approaching the end of life. And whereas these exceptional therapy animals who partner with their human companions bring comfort and healing to those in need, and whereas we encourage more pet owners to consider becoming pet partners, volunteers to help our community by creating greater access to meaningful therapy animal visits. Now, therefore, I, William Cole, Mayor of the City of Billings, do hereby proclaim April 30, 2025 as National Therapy Animal Day in Billings, and encourage our citizens to celebrate our therapy animals and their human handlers. Further, I publicly salute the service of therapy animal teams in our community and in communities across the nation. Second and last is our recognition of National Travel and Tourism Week. Proclamation reads as follows. Whereas National Travel and Tourism Week, established in 1983, is an annual week-long celebration in May that underscores travel's essential role in driving our nation's economy, cultivating vibrant communities, and forging connections between people. And whereas each year Billings hosts 2.6 million visitors for businesses, medical care, leisure, and other activities, generating an average of $621 million in spending at local businesses and accounting for 20.8% of Montana's travelers. And whereas with 55 hotels, hundreds of restaurants, numerous attractions, Billings is well positioned to responsibly host even more visitors, enhancing our city's reputation as a premier destination. And whereas tourism reduces the average tax burden for residents by over $930 per year, supports 1 in 12 Montana workers, and contributes $1.5 billion in direct employee compensation, 48,000 jobs, and $414 million in state and local taxes from non-resident visitors. And whereas tourism boosts Billings' economy, creates jobs, fosters community pride, and enhances our city's competitive edge, ensuring a vibrant community where people want to visit and live. And whereas by supporting tourism, we invest in our future, ensuring that Billings will continue to thrive as a premier place to live and visit in Montana and the northern Rocky Mountain region. Now, therefore, I, William Cole, Mayor of the City of Billings, Montana, do hereby proclaim May 4 through May 10, 2025 as National Travel and Tourism Week in Billings, and encourage all residents to recognize and celebrate the significant contributions of travel and tourism in our community. With that, we'll move to council reports. Council, any reports from organizations that you serve on behalf of the city? Any council reports? Seeing none. City administrator reports. Chris Kukulski, our city administrator, is with us virtually in San Diego. I believe maybe, Chris, you could start by telling us what you're doing in San Diego.
Yeah, we're at the Family Justice Center conference. It's their 25th conference, 25th year in existence, and there's about 6 of us from Billings. As you guys are well aware, we got the Northern Lights Family Justice Center launched back in 2024. So one of, I think we're the 45th state to add a family justice center. So I've got just a handful of items. First up, next week, remember, will be same time, same location, Monday and Tuesday, beginning to dig into the budget. So hopefully you've got those on your calendar. So they're in the council chambers. There's no ex parte communication after 3 today. Already covered the Family Justice Center. And so last but not least, want to give a update on the 69th legislative session. So we've all been very engaged, particularly in the property tax bills, both House Bill 231 and Senate Bill 542 are still alive. Today, they were sent to conference committee. Those conference committees are expected to meet tomorrow. The committees are made up. House Bill 231, they're small committees, 6-person committees. On the House committee is Senators Jones, Lair, Thane, and I think it's House Galt, Kazmaier, and Fern. Or maybe I think I've gotten those reversed. But those are the 6 members, and the same 6 are involved with Senate Bill 542, except for Fitz swaps out Lear. So Jones, Thane, Galt, Kazmaier, and Fern are both on both committees. So I've been in communication today with our lobbyist team and Helena, as well as Kelly Lynch from the League of Cities and Towns. They do expect one of these bills to come out of this process. There's the bills look very similar to how they've looked over this past week. Again, not to Billings' liking, because they do override our city charter. I did confirm our preferred Senate Bill 90 is dead, and not expected to come back. But both of these bills go into conference. They include the language that we've been seeing here for the past week. The tweak that we did request in language over these past several days, as you recall, a week ago, the council stuck with shall as being at the beginning of the paragraph. In other words, the state of Montana telling us and Sunburst, you shall do this in the first year as far as what your mill levy cap is, the new mill levy cap under their perspective. We did, however, ask that the second or third, towards the end of that paragraph, they switch out a shall for may, because they're referring to future years' levies. And we've never wanted, it's never been the intent, the rest of Montana or ourselves to be forced to go to the cap every year. So that's the one tweak that we've been told was acceptable to the powers that be. And rumor is they are going to wrap up by the end of day Wednesday, and the session will be closed. That will yet to be seen, but that's what the indications are at this point. So I'll leave it at that. Be happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any questions for Chris? I don't see any, Chris. Thank you, and enjoy the California weather, but it's going to be just as nice here.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mayor. I'll stick on till we get through part of consent, and then I'll jump off. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you. Councilor Manise?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to change the agenda to remove item F and G from the agenda. There's a second. I'll speak to that.
I'll second.
The motion is to remove item F, 1F, contract with Pride of Montana for custodial services at New City Hall, and item 1G, contract with ABM Industry Groups LLC for custodial services at the Billings Operations Center. From the agenda completely. The motion was made and seconded. So I guess we can have discussion on that agenda change.
Mayor, I'll speak to my motion.
But I'm going to just ask Gina, check whether this will be a majority vote or a super majority? If you know, I don't recall off the top of my head.
I do, Mayor. Thank you. This requires 3/4 vote, which would be 9, I believe.
Okay, could you just check on that? Okay, but while she's
9.
doing that, Councilmember Bernice, would you?
Yeah, I'm
go ahead.
not killing these items at all. This is actually in line with the minutes we just approved on March 24th, where the council voted unanimously to bring these items back to the council at a work session for discussion. And they actually, instead of coming to work session on discussion, they're presented to us for approval tonight. And they need to come back to us on a work session, and then we can have discussion about those and then bring them back to the council for approval after they've been through the work session process.
Okay, further discussion on the motion. Councilmember Kennedy, you had the second, then Councilmember Shaw.
Yes, from that, since I made the motion back on the 24th, I would just, we had agenda items 1C and 1D from that agenda to the upcoming work session, either April 21st or May 5th. Since we have gone past April 21st, it would have to go on to the May 5th. This was moved by Councilmember Kennedy, seconded by Councilmember Neese, and it was approved by the whole board 11-0. So we would just like to follow what we have, what we voted on and what was in the minutes. So that would put this as an agenda item on the meeting on May 5th.
Very good, thank you. Further, Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you. Chris or Kevin, can you confirm for me? My understanding is that if we don't vote on this or approve this tonight, we're going to lose this bid option, that we'd have to go out to rebid this whole project. Is that accurate?
So
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead, Kevin, and I can fill in a little bit from there.
yeah, Councilmember Shaw, that's accurate. The bids are only good for 90 days, and I think we are approaching that deadline or just past that deadline now. We did speak to both contractors, and they were good with whatever outcome came tonight, but we'd have to see if they were good to extend bids beyond that, so.
So just to follow up, so there's no guarantee that, I mean, the prices could increase. We have no idea what that could look like if we scrap this.
Councilmember Shaw, that's correct. Yeah, the bids
Okay.
were good for 90 days when we went out to RFP.
I would urge us to pass this. I think there's been, or I would urge us to vote against the motion. And then I would make a motion to move forward with these, I guess, approve them in some way, or at least have a vote on them. I think we've had many discussions about this. I personally don't need a work session to hash this out anymore.
Okay, further
comment
for further discussion, Councilmember Rupsis.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess Kevin or Chris, you had recommended that the items be taken off the agenda a few weeks ago because you needed to have conversations with the union, some of the due diligence or some of that explanation or negotiation had to happen before it could come to us. Could you tell us what all happened there and why we're bringing it back tonight other than the deadline of the bid?
So yes, let me tackle that first. So we did request that it be removed a few weeks back. We did sit down and had a 4-hour session negotiating with Teamsters, did arrive at an impasse, which was mutually acceptable on both sides. In other words, making sure we weren't going to get tripped up as this appeal moved forward on some kind of technical problem. So we did follow that process. I also want to respond. I believe the notes that I saw from the meeting the evening that the council postponed as well, or Mr. Kennedy requested a work session. I had pointed out that I would attempt to do that, but it would depend somewhat on the busyness of agendas. So the reason we did not have it on the work session a week ago is because we had Amon Park, all public works rates, and an initiative. Also, it is the case that next Monday, one of the first budgets we will talk about will be the building division budget. So that's key. And then last, I would say Mr. Kennedy brought up the idea that we would privatize potentially the entire department. That would be separate from this discussion. This contract for custodial services, I think we're in the 93rd day. We did talk with both. They were willing to let us stretch it to tonight. I cannot say in good faith that they would let us extend that deadline further on the custodial contracts. And I don't think they interfere with what Mr. Kennedy's asking for in a potential privatization of the rest of the department. Thank you.
Councilor Rivers, follow up there?
Thank you, Mayor. Chris, follow up on that. You mentioned, if I heard you correctly, you said as the appeal moves forward. Is there something that's still in process with that?
Yes. Yes, thank you for that opportunity. So the Teamsters are they are challenging this decision, and that'll work its way through the grievance process and potentially through an arbitrator's decision. I can tell you that at the time we had 4 FTEs that we had offered in those negotiations to do some overhiring elsewhere in the department so that nobody would be without a job. 1 has retired of the 4, and 1 has taken a job elsewhere, so we're down to 2. And essentially, our biggest risk, if we were to lose an arbitration, would be back wages from some decision in the future. And that really is not a risk here because we are keeping them employed in the organization. So that process will continue. I wish I could say it would just take weeks. It will take months, if not 18. But our risk, I think, on the cost side is quite low. And it is an important appeal, I think, for us to retain because we do use contracted services from time to time as a cost saving or a way to fill in work that needs to be done. So that process will continue, and the legal representation is being handled in-house.
Anything else? And then Councilor Rowan?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Chris, for that
Councilor Kenny?
clarification. Given all that context, as well as the many conversations that Councilmember Shaw talked about that we have had already on this topic, I'm disposed to vote against this right now and deal with the contracts as they're presented tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Rowan and Councilmember Kennedy?
Thank you, Mayor. City Administrator, I'm a little puzzled by something you said when you indicated that if there were to be a discussion next week during the budget process about a broader cost savings approach, about something more comprehensive, that approving this contract tonight wouldn't impact it. That doesn't make sense to me, because if there were to be a sort of a consideration of a more comprehensive proposal for cost savings, it feels like it would be the same vendors, and it would be weird, I think, to have a couple of staff under one vendor and their potentially supervisory staff under another vendor. I'm not getting how it wouldn't make sense, since council had asked for a work session, to just simply move this next week to the work session. I understand the time sensitivity, but what I don't understand is logistically how this doesn't foreclose us from considering additional cost-saving measures.
So a couple responses there. One, let me be clear. The conversation next week, it was mentioned by Councilmember Kennedy about considering privatizing the whole department. That's not something we've done research on or prepared to have that discussion with you next week. However, we are prepared to present the budget, which clearly shows the difference between hiring in-house staff to do the work that needs to be done in the new facilities versus this contract. That's one. Secondly, this contract does allow either party a relatively short, I believe it's 30 days, notice to end the contract without cause either way. So though it is a 3-year contract with some extensions, both parties do have a mechanism to get out without penalty. And in our discussions, it has been that the custodial service work is likely a separate entity or service than higher level maintenance work that might get done in buildings.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question.
It does in part, I think. I'm not completely persuaded, although I mean, you're answering some questions, but I'm not persuaded that we aren't better off to put this in a work session as council requested and really comprehensively look at what we can accomplish. I think we need to be candid that by the end of this week, we will have a very serious budget situation on our hands. And I'm not sure that we've achieved all our opportunities for cost savings here. I know folks are tired of me banging this drum, but I'm going to bang it again. If we had followed our ordinance on establishing agendas, this would not have been an issue. The ordinance says that council members are supposed to get a draft agenda, not a list of possible agenda items, but a draft agenda before it's published. We could have addressed this already and mentioned that there was a discussion about moving this to a work session. So I'm going to support the motion, in part because I'm frustrated that we're not following our ordinances on meetings, and in part because I think we need to be candid that the budget situation we're facing is about to become very serious, and I'm not convinced that we have explored fully our opportunities for cost savings. Thank you.
Very good. Further discussion on the motion, Councilor Kennedy.
Yes, I keep on bringing this up, and city administrator seems to find a way to keep on pushing it back. But there's some real reasons why we want to go forward. I did receive the handout, and most of you did, from the city administrator. And we looked at what we do in the menu of services. Preventative maintenance, annual systems testing is contracted out. ADA accessibility, code compliance contracted out. Asset management, I'm not sure what software you're using on that. Vendor and contract management may be done in-house, but custodial services has been contracted out. We do have some of the custodial services right now is being contracted out. And if this goes through, you contract out custodial services. Emergency service triage, I'm not sure what that is. Repairs and improvements, most of them are all contracted out. Access control, contracted out. Landscaping, contracted out.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Councilor Ripsis.
I'm sorry,
Talk
but
about whether or not
I
to
have the
remove an
floor.
item. I'm raising a point of order. We're talking about removing an item from the agenda, not about the worthiness of the item itself.
I have every opportunity to speak on behalf of this motion.
So we understand, just make the connection there.
I will make the connection. As you see, all of these things are contracted out. It was never looked upon on the maintenance side of this to go forward. I had asked for it all to come together and be looked at a work session so we could have that discussion. And all we're seeing tonight is because it's the 11th hour, we're going to ramrod it through, even though the council voted 11-0 to put it on a work session. And that really angers me. And it really, as we go forward with this, if we're going to keep on doing this kind of work, then the people out there that have elected you are going to wonder what the heck is going on. I'm going to support the motion, and I think it needs to go to a work session.
Very good. Other discussion on the motion? Is there other discussion on the motion? Councilmember Gillick.
I'll vote against the motion. I think in terms of actually, there is a larger discussion you're talking about. I don't think that what's actually on the agenda though is something germane to that discussion. That is still a separate discussion we can have. And I have certainly thoughts on that, but that in terms of what's in front of us here, I think we should vote tonight. So I will vote against the motion.
Very good. Any other discussion on the motion? Yes. Again, the motion is remove these items from the agenda.
Mayor?
Councilmember Neese?
Yeah,
we'll try to proceed to a vote soon.
Yeah, I'll support my motion, but I guess one of the things that really concerns me is the process in which we got here today, where the council made a motion to put on a work session, and there was no notice to the council, even during the work session last week, which talks about council or upcoming agenda items. It wasn't mentioned during that time. There's no notification in the weekly that this was a change in any reason. This is as said by several different council members. This is a problem that we as a council need to make sure we stand and when the council asks the staff to do things, they need to really follow the direction of the council or come to the council requesting changes to what the council has done. And so I hope you support this. This is something that it needs to be made sure that the staff is following what the council is directing them to do, and bring it back to us so we can have a bigger discussion on this. If this doesn't pass, then we'll take a look at it, on the consent item and have a vote on those at that time. So thank you.
Okay, very good. Any other discussion? I'm going to just chime in, just provide a little more background. I understand the reason for the motion, and I also agree that the council's direction to bring us back into work session was pretty clear. The reason it didn't was our last work session went till 10 o'clock at night. That goes to the issue that Chris was talking about. I don't see that there's a big clear reason not to approve this, except for that procedural issue, which I think is a very important one. And I'm glad to hear that the notice would allow us to get out of the agreement. But actually, despite that, I'm going to respect the vote of the council to put this on a work session. I just hope that this, if in the theoretical goal of saving money, this ends up costing us money, that we put our big pants on and say, yep, we followed our procedure and it cost us money. So I am going to vote in favor of the motion, but it makes me very nervous about where we may be going. And I don't blame the city administrator for trying to put this before us for approval tonight, given the deadline that we are facing, apparently with the vendors. But I hope they'll be patient with us. We apologize. We have an opportunity to save money with these contracts is my ultimate view of where this looks. So, okay, with that, we'll vote. We should have a hand vote. So again, the motion is to remove these from the agenda tonight. It will require 9 votes, our city administrator tells us. So if in favor of the, yes, Councilmember Boyette. The motion was not specific about a particular work session, I believe, was it?
It was actually, to have the the staff follow the direction of the March 24th minutes, which was to bring it 21st or May 5th. So yes, in essence,
Yes,
it does.
that's right. You're correct. I apologize. That's correct. So it'd be May 5th. Okay, if in favor of the motion to remove these items from tonight's agenda, please raise your hand. Voting in favor are council members Neese, Owen, Rogers, Kennedy, Asmolider, Tidswell, and Boyette and Cole. And if voting in opposition, council members Shaw, Gulick, and Rupsis. So the motion passes 9. Yes, I can't do my math right. 3 down. So the motion 8 in favor, 3 against. The motion fails. So we will proceed then with our regular agenda as it's described, and move on to the public comment on items that we will not have a public hearing on later. So this is a time to come forward if you'd like to comment on anything on item 1, which is our consent agenda, but also item 2, our special presentation 1, the curb cut ordinance, special presentation 2, transportation corridor plan update, and also the unified planning work program, which is item 4 on our agenda. Everything else will have a hearing later. Mr. Mayotte, would you introduce yourself and you know the routine? 3 minutes, please.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm speaking tonight as Executive Director of Amen Park Development Council. I'm speaking on item 1B. If you read today's Billings Gazette, you may have seen a photo and a quote about the Magic City Classic Soccer Tournament, which reported 200 teams in attendance this past weekend. In reality, there was 300. Participating from South Dakota, Wyoming, and Montana. The estimated financial impact, of the tournament to Billings was $450,000 to $500,000, 2 days. I want to begin by acknowledging our own shortcomings. We failed to stay engaged in the design process for the recreation center being built on city-owned property adjacent to Amen Park. This land, approximately 11 acres purchased from the Popolka family, was intended specifically for a recreation center following recommendations from the Victus study. Our failures include not ensuring a representative attended design meetings and mistakenly assumed Amen Park Development Council was considered a partner and a stakeholder, especially concerning projects impacting Amen Park. Notably, the City Council work session agenda from April 21st, 25 listed stakeholders, but did not include Amen Park Development Council. Given that we are not recognized as a stakeholder, it makes perfect sense that we were not consulted regarding the rerouting of the suburban ditch through Amen Park. Similarly, it is understandable that A&E plans to extend the east-west berm along what is commonly referred to as Area E and to install food truck spaces during tournaments without consideration of their impact on park operations. However, we strongly disagree with not being recognized as a partner or stakeholder. And we use this forum tonight to express our concerns. Regarding the berms, we would prefer that all berms be removed. They are a major impediment to field rotation and complicate field layouts. The proposed berm extension would interfere with cross-country courses used by the NCAA Division II Far West Regionals we host every other year, as well as by MSUB, Rocky Mountain College, School District 2 High and Middle Schools, and Billings Central High School. It would also reduce the limited space available for storing goals when they are not in use. At a recent work session, it was stated, the dirt has to go somewheres, unquote. However, during the last Metro Park Advisory Board meeting, their general manager confirmed they would accept all the excess dirt. Therefore, there is no need to extend any berms at Amen Park. Finally, I want to revisit a point I raised last month. Renaming the area Amen Park Recreation Campus diminishes the original...
Go ahead and finish, Mike. Go ahead.
Thank you. Diminishes the original intent of the donor, Jacob Amen. Jacob loved the outdoors. He donated the 60 acres of Amen Park because of his connection with the land and the environment, not buildings. Every Sunday, he would walk from his farm to St. Patrick's, appreciating the natural beauty of our area. All records we have suggest Jacob Amen's vision was for open outdoor space, not development. Thank you very much for your time and your consideration.
Very good. Thank you. Other public comment on any item that there won't be a public hearing on later?
Good evening. I just wanted to don't start my timer yet. I just appreciate everything you guys are doing up here. And voters out there that are watching this or have listened to this, there's some of these people up here that are trying to save you guys money and some of them aren't. So just take record of that. I'm here to speak on the contracts with the custodial. I know these custodians.
Sir,
personally.
technically, we've removed that item from our agenda. But council, with your permission.
No, you didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry, we didn't. That's right. So I apologize. Go ahead.
I have my 10 seconds back.
Yeah. No, you absolutely. We're not going to worry about that. Go ahead. Yeah,
So,
but we did. Well, I'm sorry. We needed your name though.
Ryan Starks.
Thank you.
Okay, so they take pride in their jobs. There's not very many people that'll come into work cleaning toilets and wiping up mud from the landfill that will greet you with a smile and ask you how your day's going. So we ran into some problems because we changed contracts from Big Sky Linen to Allsco a few years ago. Allsco is great for about a month. That service went down. You guys were paying for things that, getting billed and paying this out, and we weren't even receiving clean uniforms back half the time. People at the landfill did not have uniforms half the time because they just would disappear, and we were still getting billed for them that whole time. I don't know why we're cutting staff for facilities because we were talking about using them for the ice arena last week. So that doesn't make sense to me. And also, it's kind of a concern if we're going to have unvetted individuals cleaning the police evidence and the police locker room. Are these people going to go through the same background checks as all of our staff does when they come on to the facilities maintenance? Also, if we're going to go this route, shouldn't each department get to choose who they go with? We have a different tire contract than streets and traffic does. So shouldn't each department get to choose who they pick instead of it just being forced down our throats? I think it's kind of weird too that we're going with a 30-day deal that we can cancel the contract when our Teamster employees have to go through a 1-year probationary period. Why don't we extend that out? Because you'll get really good cleaning for a month. My kids can clean a place really good for a month, and then after they get used to it and they see where they can cut corners, they're going to do that. They're going to come back to you and ask for more help, and you guys are going to end up paying more instead of just keeping staff or hiring more. Lastly, if you are going to go forward with this, we should consider the supervision, because with the acceptance of this contract, the supervisors making over $100K a year will not have very much to manage. So if we're cutting down their workload, why are we still paying them the same amount of money, if at all, even keeping them on staff? I appreciate you listening to me, and I thank you for considering my comments. Have a good night.
Very good, thank you. Additional comment, is there any public comment? And please make a little line here so that we know who would like to comment. Apparently.
My name is Patrick Kitson. I live at 3923 2nd Avenue South. I hope you can hear me. I come at this with a little bit different perspective, and what I'm coming here for is the contracts. I spent 13 years working for the city of Billings as a garbage man. And I hurt my knee and went to work for John Caterino for 2 years. A lot of you guys know me because, hi Denise, hair looks great. So I kind of come with a unique perspective because I've done both these jobs. I can think of all the days like today when it's muddy as hell and we go up to the landfill and you walk from the back of your truck, front of your truck to the back of your truck, and you're 2 inches taller because of the mud. And I brought that back and I walked into that building and I never once considered those poor janitors that had to clean that crap. The stink, the filth, the waste that comes from the treatment plants out there. And once I started cleaning it, I realized how hard those guys work. I worked there. I did that job. I cleaned those toilets. I cleaned those facilities there. And I worked my ass off. And I know those guys there that are there do that too. And when I first started, I cleaned Police Barn. And I came in after ECI. And they were a company that we contracted. And they had done it for 3 months. And the place was filthy. It took me 2 months to get that up to a decent level of clean. And a lot of the policemen that I talked to, that I knew, told me that they didn't feel comfortable with the people that were cleaning their building were criminals that they arrested. Because that, let's face it, that's where those companies get a lot of these people. That's why they clean at night. And John will tell you that cleaning at night, 4 hours at night, is going to save you because those guys can come in here with less staff because there's nobody here. Well, I can tell you, cleaning street department, solid waste, all of those, even police bring in that sort of gunk. And I can tell you that when I had to clean all that, I never once considered those people to be bad people. You know, I just did my job and I went home. There's no way these guys are going to be able to clean this with 4 hours at night. And I don't care if they're there by themselves because I was there most of the time by myself. Solid waste guys go out at 8 o'clock. They don't come back till noon for lunch. They go back out and they don't come back until the end of their day. You've got plenty of time to clean. Having people in the building is not the problem. And there's no way. I look at this like an insurance company. When you go into an insurance company, you get the best rate in the world. But every 6 months, your costs go up and up and up, and that's what this is going to do. Because there's no way 4 hours, 8 hours a day that BOC is going to clean that building, especially all of those. And evidence you can't get into after hours. Even the police can't get into some of those areas after hours because they're closed down. I had to been walked through there when I cleaned that area. I had to be walked through all those areas. So I hope you vote this down because this is totally ridiculous. You're way better off with the people that you got now. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Patrick and Ryan, for your service. Any other public comment? Don't see any on any other public comment. We'll close the public comment period, move on to our consent agenda. Council, are there any separations from item number 1? Council member Kennedy?
Yes, Mayor, I would like to separate items 1F and 1G.
Very good. Other separations, Councilmember Neese?
I'd like to separate item B and C.
Item B, amendment number 1, Amon Park Recreation Center, A&E Design, and C, the guaranteed maximum price amendment number 1A for Amon Park Recreation Campus. Any other separations? Okay, we'll proceed with the non-separated items. Councilmember Boyette?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we approve the consent agenda items except for B, C, F, and G.
Second by Councilmember Rogers. Any discussion? Then Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. I have some questions regarding their petition for the bid. Who can answer? I'll ask the question to you, Kevin, and you can answer it or deflect it. One of the things I've heard from some of the downtown business owners is they pay a lot of money in this bid and they don't always get some of the services they would hope to get, which is one of them is graffiti. And you guys know that's kind of my hot button. I want graffiti eradicated, not just, stop it, eradicate it so we don't have it here. And so, as I understand, currently this program is doing some good, but you still see a lot of graffiti downtown in the bid area. It's high up, it's in alleys, and so I'm really concerned that maybe this program doesn't do everything it does. I'm gonna vote for this because I think there's some good that it does, but I just am expressing some concern that downtown business owners have over this program, that they may not be as good as it maybe needs to be. Now, we're only a small portion of what bids collecting. It's like 54,000. I'm not sure what their total budget is, and we'll see that when it comes to us. But I would hope that when we approve this, and if it does get approved by the rest of the owners, that we really look at some of the programs they have to make sure that they're working on eradicating the graffiti downtown, some of the higher up stuff. I know that's a little hard to get, but we need to get rid of that graffiti. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion, Councilor? Oh, okay. Councilmember Kennedy.
Just to follow up on the bid, who gets billed for the district?
So Councilmember Kennedy, I think I'll need some help with either Katie or Joe to come up here and they can answer that question for you.
And I can make it real easy for you because we had a gentleman right across the street from the Old Taft School who his property, he received a notice on and he could sign the petition or whatever. And he's not in the bid district, is he?
Mayor and Council, Councilmember Kennedy, we have two separate zones that make up the Business Improvement District. The larger zone is our safe zone. That extends all the way from North Park through the hospital corridor, all the way up to Poly Drive, south down to Garfield School and South Park, and then all the way over to the refinery boundary, kind of on the southeast boundary of the safe zone. And so if there is a property within that district, there's a map in the attachment on our submission tonight, if you wanted to look at that larger map. But those properties are all within that district. Remind me of where Taft School is. I apologize, just to orient myself. You said it was across from Taft School?
It's a residential house that's there.
Okay. So there are 1,060 plus properties within that district. And like I said, that larger boundary does extend. It's a much larger boundary than just the one that you would consider in the core of the district. That's where you see the sidewalk sweeping, snow plowing, flower baskets, et cetera. But that larger boundary does make up the safe zone. So if they are within that district, they are paying towards our 3 full-time police officers that we have downtown.
Okay, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Other discussion on the motion? Any other discussion? Councilor Roy?
Mayor, I had a question about the consolidated plan, please.
Item 1H.
Yes.
Wyeth.
Yes, Councilmember Owen and Mayor and Council.
Just very briefly, I wanted to again thank you and recognize the efforts in sort of rescheduling things to address a frustration of mine that we don't capture public comment adequately in the consolidated plan. But when I was looking through at Wyeth, I noticed 2 things that I just wanted you to comment on. First, I noticed the April 14th hearing wasn't included. The public hearing wasn't included in here. And then I also just wanted to confirm that other than the rescue mission email about their specific services, you didn't receive any emailed comments in on the con plan from any of the stakeholder lists that you mentioned. Is that accurate?
Councilmember Owen and Mayor and Council, I guess first I recall that the April 14th meeting was mentioned in the memo.
No, I'm sorry, in the plan itself, like where we have the summary at the end of public comments.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, we can check on that as we finalize it. I mean, basically after tonight, we'll finalize and send it to HUD. I don't know. I can see if Brenda Beckett, who's here, can add anything regarding other comments. I'm not aware of anything else regarding aside from the public, the CD board meeting and such.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we're completely comprehensively reflecting any public comments. So Brenda, you could just shake your head or nod your head if there was emailed comments that should have been reflected in here. There were not. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other discussion on the motion? Motion is to approve the non-separated items on the consent agenda. Seeing no other discussion, if in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 And council members Tidswell and Asplite are online, also voted thumbs up. So if voting in opposition, please say nay. Motion passes unanimously. So we'll move to the first separated item, which was item Councilmember Neese, item 1B, the Amon Park Recreation Campus A&E design contract. Did you want to kick us off on that?
Mayor, I separated that to vote against that, so I'll let someone else make a motion to vote, and then I'll speak to the reason why I'm voting no.
Very good. Is there a motion or any other discussion? Councilmember Gulick.
I move to approve item 1B.
Motion is for approval of item 1B, second by Councilmember Ripsis.
Mayor, excuse me, I'm going
ahead.
to ask Ed to modify his motion because I'm going to speak against 1B, both B and C. So you can actually hear those together.
Okay, Councilmember Gulick, is that your desire? Okay, so the motion is for approval of both item 1B and item 1C. Is that correct, Councilmember Gulick?
Yes.
And Councilmember Rupsis agrees on the second, so that is the motion. Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. I've spoken to this before. I think we're getting out the cart before the horse. We don't have our management plan in before we're actually doing all these contracts and building these things for the courts. I think we heard tonight that this plan didn't really even include our neighbors in a lot of respects, so there's some problems there. So this whole idea of the city of Billings having this utopia of having agreements with all these organizations working together is already falling apart. And so I think until we get something in writing, I'm going to continue to oppose going forward to this. I think this is a great opportunity to have a facility like this. I just think we're going about it wrong. And so I will vote no, because I think we got our processes backwards. We should have had a management agreement, kind of like what we did the ICE facility first. We had that in place, and then we move forward on it. So thank you.
Very good. Further discussion on the motion. Councilmember Gulick.
Just mention, I appreciate that Mr. Mayotte brought forward tonight those concerns for considerations for coordination. So, look forward to having that voice heard going forward. But I think this is good to go move forward.
Very good. Councilmember Ripsis, it was your second. Do you want to, no? Any other discussion on the motion? Question? Oh, thank you very much. Councilmember Rassmeyer and Councilmember Kennedy?
Just a comment. I intend to support the motion, but I would just note that on item 1B, when you add these contracted values together, I am not convinced that we are at the low award bid in which we initially awarded this contract to start with. Should my complaint or my concern from the get-go in the way we contracted this, it's the reason I brought the initiative, but I am not convinced by the information that I got from staff that at the end of the day, we did award to the low when you add in the additional services back into this, which we were told were removed out to make an apples to apples consideration when this contract was awarded to start with. So just to note for the public.
Okay. Councilor Kennedy.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. If you look, I was just going to ask that question. There's $250,000 for architectural, mechanical, electrical, and structural construction administered by A&E. Was that a part of the $1 million contract that was offered, or is that over and above?
So, Councilmember Kennedy, the soft cost for the construction administration was not part of the $1 million. It's included in the soft cost under the project cost, under the Langless estimates there.
So is this 250 then over and above the 1 million?
Which 250? I guess maybe I'm not following.
I'm right here on the fiscal effects. It states the 250,000 for architectural, mechanical, electrical, structural construction administered by A&E Design and as sub-consultants.
So I think Chad is, or Chris, if you could come up and maybe just touch on that of what the 250 encompasses and is a part of the 310.
Thanks, Kevin and council. The contract.
And if you would introduce yourself.
Sorry, Chris Kessel with A&E Design. I'm principal and construction manager. So the contract that we submitted was for $310,000, I believe, Councilman Kennedy.
Yes, that's what it's the 310 fee covers.
Right.
But the 250,000. There was a contract issued for $1 million for the Amen Park. And then that was going to be the cost.
Yep.
And then I see here, it's another 250,000 for services.
Right.
So I think I can answer it now that I've looked at this staff memo. The 250,000 is part of the $310,000. So that's just the 250,000, the 55,000, and the 5,000 is just a breakdown of what that $310,000 encompasses. So that's part of the soft cost that was not included in the original $1 million.
Was not included in the original $1 million.
Yes, this is under construction administration.
Right.
Thank you.
Very good. Further discussion on the motion? Is there any further discussion on the motion? Okay, we'll proceed to a vote. The motion is for approval of item 1B and 1C. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Voting opposition was Councilmember Kennedy and also Councilmember Neese. All other council members voting in favor, so the motion is approved. Next item up that was separated was the two items, the custodial contracts, items 1F and 1G. Councilmember Kennedy, did you want to make a motion, or do you want to defer to somebody else?
Yes, I would like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
Mayor, I would make a motion that items F and G be, let's see how I wanted to say this, that we refer them to the next work session.
Okay. Deja vu all over again, but okay, that's, that is the motion. Councilmember Owen? Oh, second, okay. Then discussion on the motion. I mean, this is going to have the essentially the same effect, but Councilmember Ripsis.
I just want to clarify the motion. We can't defer these items to a work session. Are we trying to defer these business items to the next business session in the hopes that we actually have I think that's probably what we're saying, is that we want to have a work session conversation next week and that these items will come back in 2 weeks on the next business meeting.
No, I would like it to go to the work session, just like we had approved before.
Well, the question is, I guess what we're doing is it's another vote on the agenda essentially, but it's really denying the contract. Jeannie, you want to weigh in on the issue here? I'm obviously having some trouble. It's essentially, I guess, to delay the vote.
I think that Mayor and Council, I agree with you all. I think there's just some communication. I think that you guys are using different language, but you probably mean the same thing. As I understand, Councilmember Kennedy's motion is he would like to remove these from the agenda so that the issues can be discussed at the work session.
Correct.
Recognizing that you can't actually vote on these items, can't actually vote to approve or not approve these contracts. So it's my understanding that the motion is to remove these from the agenda so that they are discussed at the next work session. Then these items may, I'm assuming, be brought at the next regular meeting, depending on the discussion at the work session.
Mayor.
Maybe that reflects it, but please.
We'll discuss the procedural, but you're not telling us, Gina, there's anything improper about the motion, even though it's obviously similar to our previous discussion and will require a significantly lower bar to be approved.
Well, yes, because he didn't phrase it as removed from the agenda, which would require the same 3/4, and you've already made that, you've already voted on that particular motion. So as I understand, the motion is to place these contracts on the work session agenda for discussion.
Okay, very good. So with that discussion, Councilmember, had I already recognized you, Councilmember one?
No,
I'm gonna recognize
I'm
Councilmember.
sorry, I was just clarifying my second, just to make clear.
Okay.
I seconded a motion to postpone, which is distinct under our ordinance and does not require 3/4 vote. So I assume that's the motion that has been made, and that is a lower threshold for a vote.
And it was specifically to the next work
yes,
session.
thank you.
Yeah, so Councilmember Shaw, did you?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted I had some clarification on how this is any different from what we just voted on. I think I understand a little bit more, but I just want to be clear. It's not a motion to remove it from the agenda, but postponing it does also remove it from the agenda, and that we won't make a decision tonight. I guess I still don't understand how those aren't in conflict.
The motion to remove under our rules, under city code requires a 3/4 vote. To postpone an item is a simple majority. So they're not the same, and they require a different level of vote. They're not in conflict.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'll make a comment that the whole purpose for me of this was that we should make a decision tonight, vote it up or down one way or the other. I'm not even advocating for a position on it, just that we should have the vote. And it just seems like it's a lot of hurdles to get us there. So I'm still a no on this because I think we should vote on this tonight.
Very good. Other discussion on the motion to delay this to the next work session. Councilmember Neese.
I'll support the motion for all the reasons I stated earlier to save some time.
Very good. Is there any other discussion on the motion before we proceed to a vote? Okay, the motion is to delay this to the next work session. Like I say, deja vu all over again. It's just so it's clear on the vote. If in favor of are we ready to vote? Okay, I don't see any other requests for discussion. So if in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Voting in favor are council members Neese, Owen, Rogers, Kennedy, Boyette, also councilors Tidswell and Aspenlighter. Did you have your hands up? Yes. And I'll be consistent. I'll say Cole. So if voting in opposition, please raise your hand. Voting in opposition, council members Rupsis, Kendra Shaw, and Ed Gulick. So the motion does pass 8-3. We're going to clarify that. Councilmember Tidswell was a no. I apologize. Thank you for correcting that. So the motion still passes 7-4. And that resolves our consent agenda. Brings us to the regular agenda. Denise, would you please read item number 2?
Public hearing and land use contrary to zoning for Orchard School. No action is necessary this evening.
Very good. Karen.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Karen Hussman with Planning. This is a land use contrary to zoning application. You've seen a few of these recently since about 2001. It's a public hearing to gather information, comments from the City Council to the agency, and for the public to give any kind of comment they would like to put in. It's not something that you approve or deny or that we can put conditions on. State law requires that we have a public hearing before the City Council and receive this public comment. This was that change that occurred in 2021 to move those public hearings from the Board of Adjustment, who approve our variances, and to the governing body to allow the public comment to come from the governing body and governing agency, which would in the county would be the Board of County Commissioners. This is a request from the Orchard School to allow a change from their static sign that they have that is allows one message at a time, and that has to be changed manually to an electronic message board. And it will be on the Jackson Street side facing the front of the school. This is the original existing sign, and it's going to be replaced exactly the same size in the same place with an electronic message board. They do still have to get a sign permit and follow all of the electronic message requirements under the sign code. So they would have to have that sign permit approved with those in place. That's the end of my presentation. I did want to point out we have two others that we heard, Arrowhead School in 2022 and Rose Park School in 2024. So that concludes my presentation.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions for Karen before we open the public hearing? Councilmember Rowan.
Thank you, Mayor. I noted in the staff memo that prior to Project Recode, we used to have just a sort of a blanket permission for schools to do EMD signs. Can we not go back to that? Because I'm not sure this is the highest and best uses of anybody's time.
That would have to go, excuse me, that would have to go through zoning text amendment.
Right.
If that's something that the council would like to have staff look into, we certainly can.
I certainly would. I don't want to speak for everybody else, but we can't vote on this. We're just hearing it. There used to be an exemption. I don't particularly want to sit through 22 elementary schools updating their signs. So I don't know if we're still compiling cleanup lists for Recode. I think we're not, but I certainly would be interested in seeing us reinstating whatever those limitations were, especially recognizing that there's still a sign permit required.
I can bring it to my supervisors and we can.
I think they're whispering even as you speak. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Any other questions before we move on to public hearing? Wyeth, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council, and Councilman Rowan. We can certainly follow up. I believe part of the reason for the amendment was we had specific uses and entities that we had called out in the code that we were saying, you know, you were subject to this, but everybody else is subject to that. And I think that was part of the reason for the change, was to make sure that we were treating all those like because we had churches and schools and specific uses or you know, entities called out versus just looking at the use. So we can check into that, but I believe that's why that change was made. Thanks.
Okay, very good. We'll open up, Councilor Neese, some question before that? Okay.
I did have a question for Karen, and by the way, I do agree with Jennifer that it would be nice for an exception. But Karen, I know you said this, that we've already approved this in a couple other schools, and I believe and you said they're subject to the sign codes and stuff like that, but the picture you showed, it looked like the sign was pretty well hidden behind some bushes and stuff, and I'm assuming they're probably going to be trimming those bushes, allowing that sign to really shine. Will it be dimmed at night? Is that one of the requirements that they have to have?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, that would be helpful. I mean, if that's going to be an exception, making sure that's one of the things, it's the requirement of exceptions, to make sure it's dimmed at night when any neighbor here is not going to be shining in their window.
If it is brought to that point where it would be an exception, they still have to get a sign permit approved, and that's part of those requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. We'll open up for public hearing then on item number 2, the proposed Orchard School sign. If anybody would like to comment and is here for that, please come to the podium. Is there any public comment on item 2? Before I close the public comment period, any public comment on item 2? No one is coming forward, no one's standing up, so we'll close the public hearing. And council, there is no decision to be made, but we are allowed to give any other input. Is there any other input for the school district before we move on to item number 3? Don't see any, so thank you very much. That concludes item number 2. Item number 3, Denise, would you read item number 3?
Public hearing and first reading ordinance for zone change 1064, generally located at 1115, 1116, 1121, 1122, 1126, and 1127 Buffalo Crossing Drive. Zoning Commission recommends approval and adoption of the 10 review criteria.
Karen, long time no see.
Thank you, Council. This is a zone change request for 6 parcels in the Buffalo Crossing subdivision. They want to go from N3 to N2, and they're similar in allowances and the site development. The one main difference in the N3 is it has a minimum setback distance, where the N2 has a required build to zone. And the reason the applicant is proposing this zone change is because in the N2, currently under our code, is allowed duplex dwellings, which is 2 units in one structure as well as single family. And the N3 doesn't allow that. So this is the surrounding zoning in Buffalo Crossing. To the north is currently N2, and to the south is N3, which is the suburban neighborhoods. And to the east is the NX2 zone district, which is mixed residential. And to the west is the RR3, which is the county line on the west side. Here's an aerial screenshot for you. This shows, I zoomed out a little bit so you can see the Foxtail Village to the north, which also has duplexes within their subdivision, as well as the Grand Peaks to the east. And a little bit more information to show you what's going on in the subdivision. They have 2 master site plans approved currently. The property immediately to the east is approved for 18 units, 3 4-plexes and 1 5-plex. And the property north of that is another master site plan approved for 56 units, including 1 7-plex, 2 6-plexes, 5 5-plexes, and 3 4-plexes. And those have already been approved, like I said, through the master site plan review process. And the 6 parcels are separated by a street. So this is the east side and the west side. And this is looking northwest. I've got northeast. And then looking south. I have one last picture. This is the southeast. This is the zoning map that the applicant submitted. It shows the 6 parcels will be the same as the properties to the north. The Zoning Commission held their public hearing and they are forwarding a recommendation of approval. It does meet the intent of the growth policy and the West Billings neighborhood plan, strong neighborhoods and development patterns that use the land efficiently. The adjacent uses and zoning are compatible with a mixture of single family and multifamily. It's located within that new subdivision, and all of the development will require all building and siting standards to be met. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Karen? Councilor Ripsis and Councilor Renese.
Thank you, Mayor. Karen, so our zoning code still says that N3 does not allow duplexes, but if I recall correctly, state law was changed in the last legislature to say anything that allows single family will allow duplexes as well. So is it really just the setback versus the build to zone that is the issue here, and why we want to do this change now, why the developer wants this change?
No, the Senate Bill 323 was approved to allow duplexes on any residential zone lot. The applicant is stated very clearly that they would like to be in compliance with our local zoning regulations, and that is his full reason for applying for the zone change rather than depending on the state law in case state law did change and our regulations are the same.
But to be clear, if anybody brought you an N3 zoning and said, we're going to build a duplex here, the city would have no problem with that, right?
Correct. We could not deny that.
All right. Thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. Those are some that's along the same lines, but I guess my question is then, because I think their reason they stated is because the property line was over in N2 and N3 zone. But rather than fixing just the 2 properties that had that dividing line there, they decided to add in 2 additional properties. Why didn't they just fix the problem with the N2s and the N3 that are over a property line and not? And why do they include additional properties?
That's a question I do not have an answer for. I believe that the applicant's agent is here. They may address that for you.
Because I'm apt to say yes for the one property that was over the line, but to add additionals, that kind of goes against what the council originally approved on this quite some time ago. And I think it was a little contentious at that time with some of the design on it. But yeah, if we can understand why. And then I guess the other question is maybe for Gina. Gina, can we actually condition this to just say they include the property that was the N2, N3 zone request, or do they have to come back and do a whole new request?
Zone change just
Councilmember
can't.
Neese and Mayor and Council, it's my understanding that zone changes cannot be conditioned. I think that Council's been advised of that previously, but
so
that's my understanding.
We probably have to deny it or allow them to withdraw it to bring it back. Is that kind of what I understand?
I believe if you were to approve the 2 parcels or vote to approve or recommend, you can do less than what they're asking.
Okay.
You can't do more than what they're asking.
Okay, great.
I will have that to be clarified, but that's what I believe.
Okay, and if the agents were here to kind of speak to my question about that would be helpful.
Do we have an agent from the developer? And please come forward. And you want to take a couple minutes and just describe the project generally or whatever you'd like, and then you can either address the council member's question or ask him to restate it. So go ahead.
Mayor and Council, Greg Reed with WWC Engineering, agent for the project. I guess a couple things on the note about it. The desire is for all 6 lots to get changed to the N2. The lots to the north of it are all N2, have already all sold to builders. There's desire for all 6 of these lots to also be able to have duplexes. The buyer for those lots, he does not necessarily want to have N3 zoning allowed by state law that he could build duplexes on. He'd prefer just to get the zone change confirmed and completed so that he doesn't have any, I guess, concerns long-term on it. My perspective on the zone change, the original one on Buffalo Crossing, just to kind of go back to it, I think a lot of the concerns were related to the NX2 zoning over around the edges of the property and the density of that, which I specifically remember the concern from the neighbors being rear-facing garages pointed at them. And as you saw with the schematic brought up, the developer worked with Nicole a lot to try and figure out how to do that and reoriented the buildings to have driveways in the middle such that the rear-facing garages were removed from the Trails West properties.
Okay, Mayor, do you mind a follow-up question?
Go ahead, Councilor Bernice.
Thank you. So the reason you're asking for the 6 lots and not just 2 is because of a buyer. Is that, I understand that correctly? Okay.
Correct.
And so if you have buyers for some of these other N3 properties, would you be seeking also for zone changes on those?
At this time, there's no plan of that in the future. That hasn't been discussed in any way.
Okay. And then the property to the west, is that, do you know if there's any indication of what that's going to be developed to in the future? Is that going to stay farmland for a while, or do you know if there's anything? Because that's the other concern when we ask, do zone changes, we're now affecting property next to this.
I don't have any knowledge of the property to the west of this being considered for development or anybody looking to buy it.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Yeah, well, we've got Greg here. Any other questions for him?
Thank you.
I don't see any. Thank you. Very good. This is a public hearing, so we will open up public hearing on item number 3, the proposed zone change 1064. Please come forward.
Doug Wild with Buffalo Crossing Development. The main reason we pushed for we're approaching with the zone change is to be in compliance with current city zoning. We know that we can build what we want to there regardless of that. We think zoning is an important thing and should be followed, and so that's why we're here. Not because we need your permission to build what we want to build there, but we think it's appropriate to follow zoning. So that's why we went for the zone change. That's all.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, any other public comment on item number 3? This is a public hearing. Any other public comment on item number 3, zone change 1064? No one is standing up. No one is walking forward. So we'll close the public hearing and back to council. Councilmember Boyette and Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor. Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve first reading ordinance of zone change 1064 and adopt the findings of the 10 criteria as recommended by the Zoning Commission.
Second by Councilmember Shaw. Discussion. Councilmember Boyette, Councilmember Shaw, would you like to speak to your motion or second? No. Councilmember Shaw? No. Other council members, any discussion? Kevin, you're not standing there because you want to chime in on this, right? Okay, very good. Any other discussion before we proceed to a vote? Scanning for little yellow hands. Council, if anybody sees Councilmember Tidswell or Esplanier's hands go up, let me know. Okay, we'll move to a vote. The motion is for approval. Item number 3. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. 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 If opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Go forth and build duplexes. Item number 4. Denise, would you please read item number 4?
Approval to forward a recommendation of approval for amendment number 1 of the Billings Metropolitan Planning Organization's MPO FY25 Unified Planning Work Program UPWP to the Policy Coordinating Committee PCC. Technical Advisory Committee TAC recommends approval.
Laura, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. And I've decided to try to catch a cold today, so if I get a little spacey or fogged out, just say, come back. So I mentioned this briefly at the work session where we discussed the TIP amendment that the MPO would be bringing forward a UPWP amendment to look at reorganizing some of the projects we had identified in FY25 to update that. So again, our Unified Planning Work Program, our UPWP, is our transportation planning and work program for staff and projects that we're going to complete in the fiscal year. And in this case, this is a federal fiscal year, so it will end September 30th. We develop it through coordination with county, city, public works. We come to the city and the county for discussion of projects and move forward with those projects. We try to enhance and ensure that we adhere to all our federal transportation planning requirements and that we move forward with projects that support local goals. So periodically, we do have to update our UPWP. Not very often. For a long time, we haven't had to do this. But we felt that this year, there seemed to be some shift in community goals and desires for the MPO to accomplish some projects. So this amendment will change element 302 and element 700 in the UPWP. Element 302 is our planning studies. Element 700 is unobligated transportation planning dollars that we had not allocated. One of the projects in element 302 was to update the city's Complete Streets Progress Report that we try to do every 3 or so years just to see how that policy is operating. If we see more users, what impacts of that policy has on the city and the community. We're just starting that process, but we did allocate a small contract of $20,000 to do a very limited economic research, not research, but analysis on that policy. But what we're hearing from our local officials, and we want to make sure that we're trying to address your needs, is that we need to look at that in a little bit more depth. We don't think we can do that with $20,000. I am definitely a planner, not an economist, so we're going to need a little bit of help and guidance on how that will look. And I can't even tell you tonight exactly how that'll look, but we're going to try to get you the best data and information we can through that. So what we're doing is removing an element in 302, which was a bike scooter share RFP, which came out of a transportation study we did in 2021 that looked if we had a bike share or a private company came in to rent scooters and stuff, how that would look. The intent was of the RFP was to get ahead of that and get a company that followed all city policy or regulations that we might have. We don't feel like that's a good use of our transportation planning dollars at this moment. We feel it's better to do the economic research on Complete Streets policy and move forward with that. So that's what we're asking for tonight. In addition, that was $20,000. That will add an additional, that money, and then we're adding $3,000 of additional unobligated PL funds and $2,000 local that comes from the city planning department for $45,000 to try to look at this economic analysis for the community. This is our review schedule. It's been to the Technical Advisory Committee, which is made up of city and county MDT staff. They are recommending approval. The Planning Board recommended approval of this last week. And when I mean recommend approval, they are sending a recommendation of approval to the Policy Coordinating Committee. I'm going to the county commissioners tomorrow, and tonight I'm talking to you fine folks. And then May 20th will be PCC, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Questions for Laura? This does require approval. There is no public hearing. Councilmember Ron.
Thank you, Mayor. Laura, when I look through the work plan document, it indicates that there is supposed to be a Complete Streets Progress Report every 3 years. When I look on the transportation planning website, the last one I see is 2020, I think. Is that right? Did we miss 23?
I don't think thank you, Councilmember Owen, Mayor, Council. I don't think we necessarily missed it, but it was the height of COVID, and things had changed. And with the staffing turnover we've had the last couple of years, we just haven't had the ability to do that. So that's why we got it programmed in the FY25.
Okay, so I guess that's essentially the follow-up, Mayor. The question I'm asking, are we proposing here to do a Complete Streets Progress Report for 2026? Is that what we're going to accomplish tonight, or?
Thank you. We are actually in the midst of updating that 2020 right now. So the progress report really just updates all the data that we collected in 2020. So I think it'll be very interesting considering we were in the height of COVID at that time and now we're out of it. So it's just an opportunity to bring information, updated data on transit ridership we're seeing. We have a chapter on automobiles. One of the things we're doing as well is right now it's not a huge document, but we're going to try to make more one pagers of that information on each element. So it might be bicycling, it might be
Okay.
automobiles.
Okay, so just a quick comment, and Laura, you can respond to the comment if you like. I'm happy to give some guidance on where I think it should go, and it's not quite this direction. I think it's really important we do a complete streets progress report and that we look at some of the underlying pieces of it. I am more interested in understanding what I will inartfully call the financial side of it than I am the economic side of it. I think we can look at a lot of planning documents and see economic impacts. What I haven't seen yet and what I don't see in the language is actually rigorously understanding the cost, not just of construction, but maintenance, what it means on an ongoing basis. So, Mayor, I assume someone will make a motion to approve this tonight. I'm going to add in a couple of amendments to tighten up the language in the direction of making sure that we're really focusing on costs. I think we have a lot on economic impact. It's fine to do it, but I really want to get at the cost, not just to build, but to maintain. So can you let me know if you have any concerns with that direction?
Thank you, Councilmember Owen, Mayor and Council. That is not a problem at all. We have a trail maintenance plan that was developed, I believe, in 2011. That obviously was 2011. So I think we are definitely going to look at all those aspects of it. We know that there are many benefits of building complete streets. We're going to try to bring you as much well-rounded information, financial information as we can. Again, a little uncharted territory for us, but we're definitely in this to try to bring you guys the best information, and we can coordinate with the council through administration the best way to do that.
Thanks.
Very good. Councilor Road, Councilor Nice has his hand up. I'll recognize him unless you were prepared to make some sort of motion this time. You just.
No, not at this time, but I will after we've done public comment and get to all the motions.
Okay, very good.
I was going to say, yeah, Scott had his hand up prior to me, but then.
Okay, very good. If you don't mind, we'll recognize Councilor Asseliner and Councilor Nice. Councilor Asseliner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two questions, if I can, for Laura. Laura, I was at the commissioners' discussion meeting on the 23rd, and I think I understood what the county commission's directive was, or their request of you was during that. Can you kind of describe to council what the county commission's desire was as you take this to them tomorrow?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Aspenleiter, Mayor, Council. My understanding from the Yellowstone County Board of Commissioners is they have concerns of the complete streets policy directing different types of non-motorized facilities in that policy, specifically the use of bike lanes, on-street bike lanes. So I'm trying to understand completely, and we're having that discussion with them too, but they want more of a return. They want to know what the return of investment, what are the users, if we're using public money to put these types of facilities in our public right-of-way, what type of return on investment? That's a very hard term, being a local government, as a return on investment. We can show you data on users and why we do those types of facilities for those that don't drive or need to get to the transit. So again, this is a little uncharted territory for us, but we're going to try to work with both local governing bodies to try to determine the best information we can proceed. I don't know if we can actually get a full return on investment with the money we're proposing. Again, I just don't know, but we want to give it a shot. We want to try to give you guys the best information. But I know there's concern that the use of public money for specifically bike lanes on our public roads.
Thanks, Laura. Mr. Mayor, just one comment, and then I'll be done.
Okay, go ahead.
I would tend to agree with Councilwoman Owen on this. To piggyback on what she's referring to me, I think oftentimes as we talk about this stuff, particularly complete streets, we tend to conflate recreational trails with bike lanes in our transit routes. And so I want to be sure that we're separating those two things so that we're looking at them differently, I guess, is my request. Depending on how Councilwoman Owen phrases her motion, Skyline Trail is different than the bike lanes on Rimrock and other streets in this community. And I think those things need to be separated out differently, and looked at differently. So what I would hope that we don't see is mixing those things all together and pushing in the recreational trail stuff, when for me, what I'm talking about and interested in is exactly what Councilwoman Owen asked for, the operational costs and the maintenance costs and the rework costs from Public Works associated with maintaining striping and crossings and those types of things, as they are tied directly to or on or directly adjacent to our core transportation system. Not Skyline Trail or, the other recreational trails that we have in this community. Those are different and separate. What I'm concerned about is what is tied to and what is coming out of our Public Works budget, not out of our trails budget.
Thank you. May I respond, Mayor?
Please.
Thank
Laura.
you, Councilmember Aspenlighter, Mayor and Council. In some cases, shared use paths along our complete streets, which are primarily arterials, are actually a part of the complete street. Not necessarily Skyline Trail. I totally agree. That's along Montana Highway 3. We wouldn't consider that a complete street. That's an MDT route. But when we look at the most recent one I can think of that this council looked at would be Maloney Lane, and that included a sidewalk on one side and a shared use path on the other, which is very supported by our community in having those types of facilities. But it is still part of the complete streets, but it will be separated. This will not include our recreational trails, even though you can use those multi-use paths for recreation. We're not looking at places like Skyline Trail or Swords Park or the Colson Trail. We're actually looking at streets that are under the complete streets policy that have used those type of elements in their construction.
Okay, if that's good for you, Councilmember Aspenlighter, thumbs up. Councilmember Neese, you also want to chime in?
Thank you. I think Councilmember Owen and Aspenlighter addressed a lot of my concerns, and I would just echo what that you would describe this county commissioners want. I think I'm along those same lines. My concern is we're going to approve a $45,000 amendment to this. We're going to see a study, and then we're going to, turn it down when it comes to us. And so I really am concerned that if we're going to spend this money prior to you doing RFPs, that you work with the county and you work with city council members to actually formulate that RFP to hone down what is it we're looking for. Because if we come back and it's all about economic, how multimodal is going to increase property values, as I'm reading through here, it really doesn't answer some of the questions that have been addressed tonight. So I would hope that we're looking at these with council members involved in this whole process and county commissioners as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Neese. We will take that into account. It may be a little bit of everything just to make sure that we have all the information and data that we can get out of this contract, but we will definitely try to meet your guys' needs as well as the county.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other, Councilmember Shaw?
I'd like to make a motion to approve. We don't have public comment. Yeah. I move to approve the City Council forwarding a recommendation of approval for Amendment Number 1 of the Billings Metropolitan Planning Organization's MPO FY25 Unified Planning Work Program to the Policy Coordinating Committee as recommended by the Technical Advisory Committee.
Okay, motion is to approve as drafted. Is there a second, Councilmember Boyette? Okay, did either of you want to
I
address
would
your
like to
motion?
speak to it, yes. I think what Councilmember Neese brought up is a very real possibility, as we've seen happen recently. We get these plans that we approve at this stage and they've come back to us and we've said no, which is just throwing money in the garbage. So I would say if people are not inclined to approve the plan when it comes back after looking at it, don't vote for it tonight. Thank you.
Good. Further, okay, now Councilmember Owen.
Thank you, Councilmember
Laura.
Shaw. I just want to clarify that this isn't like a transportation planning document that we normally take through our process. This is more of a progress report. So last time we just give a presentation, it's really not asked for you to act on it, to approve or deny it. It's basically just a report out.
Okay, if that's clear, Councilmember Neese?
Yeah, to follow up on that.
Go ahead, Councilmember Neese.
But Laura, don't you use that report then to support additional projects in the future? Wouldn't that report be referred to say, well, based upon our our study or report, this is why we should do something else. So that report is important for future projects.
Councilmember Neese, yes, it is. The data collected is what we would use in the future, whether it be traffic counts or anything like that. We would use that data for in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Rowan?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to make a motion to amend this language, but Mayor, would you prefer that I try to do one big monster amendment or a couple of cuts and bites?
If it lends itself to being chopped up, maybe we should chop up.
Okay, so I'm going to make these motions and refer folks' attention to pages 28
How many
and
are we
29.
talking about, by the way?
2.
Oh, that's.
I just wanted this, the latter one's kind of a mouthful.
Okay.
So I'm going to make a motion to amend the language at the bottom of page 29 by inserting the words financial and before economic in the second sentence.
Okay, on page 29, inserting the words financial and before the word economic, bottom of that page.
Correct. So we'll read the consultant will conduct a financial and economic analysis. On the bottom of page 28, excuse me.
So the final bullet under the word product.
No, I'm looking at the, at the Unified Planning Work Program document, amendment number 1, where there is the red highlighted language.
Oh, okay. In the sentence that says, with the original $20,000 for the Complete Streets Progress Report update, this allocates a total $45,000 for
28, Mayor. The sentence that reads, the consultant will conduct an economic analysis of the Complete Streets policy.
Just make sure we've got the same. Which paragraph on page 29?
The second paragraph under the bullet.
It's 28.
Oh, sorry, I had the wrong page.
It's okay. We'll get there. I know, I heard.
Okay. Second bullet, and which sentence in the second bullet?
The second sentence of the second paragraph.
Progress report tracks.
The consultant will conduct an economic analysis of the Complete Streets policy.
Okay.
I want that to read a financial and economic analysis.
I'll second that.
Okay. So the motion is made and seconded. Is the motion, any discussion on the motion? Okay, are we ready to vote? Let's vote on that. Is motion clear? If in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. In the second amendment, we're just going to continue on now in the third sentence, where it reads, beginning at the phrase, cost of construction.
So this is the sentence beginning the MPO anticipates?
Yep, we're at the top of page 29 now. So the analysis will focus on assessing the relationship between infrastructure investment and economic benefits by examining both the cost of construction and beginning at that point, I would insert and maintenance of complete streets, capital I infrastructure, parentheses, other than optional features in the policy, and then strike the word complete streets improvement. And if there's a second, I will explain. Okay, sorry. Got it?
Yeah.
The top of 29,
and just
yes.
make sure that all of our 29s are the same. Does the top of your 29 begin with the word assessing?
Correct.
Okay. And then keep working down.
Yep, so we're going to begin assessing the relationship between infrastructure investment and economic benefits by examining both the cost of construction and then insert the language that I just articulated.
Very good. And so this would be in the second line, top of page 29, after the second word, construction. And then just would you repeat again your amendment?
Yes. So, and maintenance of complete streets, capital I infrastructure, parentheses, other than optional features in policy, end parentheses, and then striking the words complete street improvement.
So the whole sentence would read, beginning with this analysis. Would you read the whole sentence beginning with this analysis?
This analysis will focus on assessing the relationship between infrastructure investment and economic benefits by examining both the cost of construction and maintenance of complete street infrastructure other than optional features in the policy and the potential economic and community. I assume, Laura, that's supposed to read benefits.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Is that, so that's a motion. Was there a second?
Yes, and I'll speak to the motion.
Okay, Councilor Burketti had the second. And so go ahead and speak your motion. Go ahead.
So as I had mentioned, I want to see maintenance included in here, so I'm adding that. And then to Councilmember Aspenleiter's points, our complete street policy actually defines complete street infrastructure as exactly what he is talking about. So it is sidewalks, bicycle lanes, shared youth paths, designated transit lanes, et cetera, et cetera. So that narrowing of the scope is what's defined in policy. There is this optional feature at the end of including really anything from the bike and trail master plan. So I'm trying to take that out to be consistent with what he and I agree with should be outside the scope. And so I believe that gives us the definition we need to narrow the focus where it belongs.
Okay, discussion on the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councilmember Bernice?
Councilmember Owen, when this report comes back to us, I guess my concern is, because you do add things like maintenance, capital improvements, if I understand, if I wrote my notes correctly. Is this going to give us the potential, not just economic and community benefits, but then the how it's going to relate to the average property owner as far as their taxes, what they have to pay for that? Is that going to show them what their cost is going to be, not just the city's cost, but what is it going to cost the residents? We're going to be able to determine that.
Well, I think the previous amendment would have accomplished that more than this particular amendment. This is really broadening the scope to include maintenance and narrowing the scope to include a very specific defined term of complete streets infrastructure. My hope is the addition of financial in the previous amendment would capture what you're speaking to.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion? Okay, we're ready to vote. Motion clear. Okay, if in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. I believe that concludes the amendments. Any discussion now on the amended motion? Motion is for approval with those amendments. Any further discussion? If not, we'll proceed to a vote. Okay, is the motion clear? We're now voting on the whole plan with those two amendments. If in favor of the motion for approval of the amended plan, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay.
Nay.
I'm sorry, Councilor Bernice? Did you vote?
I said nay.
You said nay. So motion passes, exception to Councilmember Bernice, motion passes 10-1. That concludes item number 4. Council at 7:30, we've got two special presentations, kind of call it work session like. Normally we take a break at this time, and I think we will unless there's objection. Okay, we'll take a brief break and be back as close to 7:40 as possible. Oh.
Normally,
Oh,
they don't need
sure,
to-
flip these, not,
Yes.
not on these items, but just, welcome back, everybody. Thank you. We left off, having concluded item number 4. Our next item up on our agenda would be the special presentations for like our work session. There was a request by Councilmember Nice. However, because those might take a little while and they are unusual to have those, there might be people who've come here to comment on things that were not anywhere on our agenda, and we would have to make them wait until the very end of our meeting. And so Councilmember Nice's request was that we move public comment on non-agenda items up so that anybody who wants to comment on something not on agenda can do that and then go home. And I'm fine with that, but it is a change to our agenda, so we would need a vote. So we'll make, Councilmember Boyd, you want to make that motion?
The motion is to move public comment on non-agenda items to after number 4, and then move special presentations after that.
Okay, Councilmember Nice, you want to second that? Okay, any discussion? Okay, if the motion is clear, if in favor of that change to our agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. If opposed, nay. That motion passes unanimously. So we will do that. Mac, sorry, those might delay you a minute, but hopefully not too long. So we did, hopefully people in the audience understood that. We've moved, if you came to comment on something that was not on our agenda at all tonight, and you'd like to do that right now, this is your opportunity. You won't have an agenda or an opportunity to do it later. So please come to the podium if you'd like to comment on something that was not on our agenda tonight. This is your golden opportunity. Thank you for your patience.
Okay. Is this my?
And we just ask you keep your mouth pretty close to it. It picks up better.
My name's Stephen Muse. I'm here on behalf of the people in the Heights with all the gravel roads we have up there. We need to do something with them gravel roads because it's nothing but potholes. And there's places, either that or maybe, make them one-way streets because there's so many holes up there and there's just no maintenance been done. And we need to get them roads paved or something. Need to get some, raise some money somewhere to get that done. And I don't know what your laws are, but when I lived in Texas, when they annexed you into the city, they had 2 years to give you water, sewer, curb and gutter, and a street. And I don't know why they didn't do that here, because we have nothing up there. It's nothing but holes. And I called them 2 months ago, and nobody has come out and fix them, and somebody is going to get hurt because the holes get about 3 foot around the corner, so you got to go way out and about. You got to take the other lane. If there's cars parked on the side, you can't see. So, and that, I mean, we got to get something done with that. Okay, that's one problem. Okay, and I was here. It was 10 years ago, and let's see. I think Tom
Hamill was probably the mayor back.
Yeah. Okay, we got on the in the construction. I'm in construction, and the builders, they don't put a bathroom on the job. I mean, you go out there. I've been out there, and I have a guy working for me, and I thought he had left because there was one bathroom about 3-4 blocks down or whatever, and then there's people at it. So it takes them 30 minutes to get back. And I know this is a law that, I mean, it's common sense. As a matter of fact, I've talked to people here in this building, and the first thing they say, it's common sense. You got to have a bathroom. It's just like you people here. Would you come here to work if you had to go to the bathroom down at the Holiday down on 6th? I mean, there's bathrooms right here. But and another thing I'd like to say is that anybody who's had a house here that's been built in the last 50 years, anybody that's got a house been built in the last 50 years here, when you're sitting in your bathtub, you might think that someone might have defecated in your bathtub or in your closet or urinated all over your house, because that's what happens on these jobs. And I worked on Sheridan for 30 years, and I've never had to look for a bathroom. They got them on a job. When I was here before, I told them, maybe you should call Sheridan and maybe get something. But it's in that book. It's common sense. You need a bathroom. The first thing on that job.
And sir, if you could just wrap up.
Okay, the first thing on the job, on your building permit, should be a bathroom up there. And that's my problem.
Very good. Thank you. Very good. Any other public comment on things not on our agenda tonight? Any other public comment before we close the public comment period? No one is standing up. No one's moving forward. We'll close the public comment period. And Mac, special presentation item number 1, curb cut ordinance.
Great. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Want to talk a little bit tonight about the curb cut ordinance and a little bit of context. What is that? Well, we have the city code that covers site developments. So the curb cut ordinance is a subset of that site development ordinance. So we're kind of honing in on and focused on that. With your council memo, I provided a copy of the sort of the red line code and then kind of a cheat sheet along with that kind of shows what changes are being proposed and why they're important. I will tell you that the code red lines that you have in your packet are a version that has been through some iterations as a result of some public meetings, meetings with builders, et cetera. So we've tried to incorporate those up to this point, so it's kind of a living document. So you have the most current version there. So kind of where we've been with meetings, we've kind of run this by the Public Works Board, a couple different meetings with the Home Builders Association, local issues, also just some home builder discussions. We had an open house here at the city on April 9th. We also ran this through Planning Board last week. So here we are at the work session. We're anticipating doing the public hearing on May 27th, followed by the second reading on June 9th. So why are we doing this? Why are we changing the code? If you recall back in the fall, we went through the subdivision regulations And there were a few elements of our site development that we want to make sure mesh with the curb cut ordinance. So that's part of the reason for change. We want to make sure that the traffic study elements that we went through last fall in the subregs matches the site development. We've also had historically a large number of variances on those local residential streets, as you recall, so we want to clean that up. And then back when Recode was implemented, the site surfacing paving of your parking lot, if you will, was completely taken out. So we're trying to add that back in. So a summary of those changes. Again, we want to reference the subregs for traffic studies, private street development. We'll get to that in a minute. We also have been trying to find out where those pain points are with residential access and builders and kind of some of that flexibility. Kind of another rule that we wanted to implement here, it seems common sense, but don't park across the sidewalk. We added the surfacing back for site development. One other thing we did add in here, and that is an administrative relief. We run into situations where builders might need a little flexibility. Maybe they're on a hill, they need a foot or two kind of minor things to change due to construction issues. So we allowed for some sort of administrative relief. Just as a reminder, I don't want to get into the detail, but this was the sort of three-tier traffic study that we had in the subregs. We're consistently bringing that over to the site development. One change we do want to implement, and if you have an old traffic study that's older than 10 years, we're looking for a refresh for that. So that's really the only change there. So what have we heard so far? This is through our meetings with development community consultants, the builders. Traffic studies, we had a comment on that. That they really should be dealing with their issues that they're causing and need to mitigate. So we updated some of the languages on that. We've had some good discussion with builders on, what are those curb cut frequencies? Some of them say, well, I want to build this. How do we work through that without sort of messing with safety or parking, those kinds of things. So I think we've gotten some good feedback there. We had a zoning conflict between the codes. I think we've solved that through these changes. I highlighted the big one there. So we are referencing for private streets, because they many times are done with site development, and that is sidewalks and streetlights. So we'll get in that in a minute. I do want to highlight that the planning board supported that concept. I think Councilmember Gulick wanted a couple of pictures to highlight some of the major changes, so I've added a couple slides from that's in your packet. First one here is that we're allowing two curb cuts or driveways, if you will, for up to a 2-unit building. So that covers like the duplexes. This was a pain point in the previous code for lots of variances, so I think we've figured that out. So here's kind of a representation of that. The other one is curb cuts on a local street. Let's say you had a building that had more than 2 units. So we've changed that. This is a photo I took here a few weeks ago, kind of looking at, hey, how are things working here? So this follows our current code, but also allows multiple curb cuts for a larger building. So what you can see in this photo, cars are parked in those spaces, the 25 feet between the approaches. It seems to be working. So I wanted to highlight that with the code. One other pictorial that's been a little bit of a tricky one. We have some of the streets that have, if you will, a corner, and the current code doesn't really allow for anything on corners, but this is for local residential streets. And so we're allowing for that flexibility, essentially that corner unit, if you will, to access that local street if there aren't any site distance issues. And that's kind of in the allowing some more builder flexibility. Just a quick highlight on our surfacing. The previous code there is in yellow. The new point is in the red line version, but just kind of getting that paving back in for the parking lots. We do still allow for gravel if you have a gated storage. You know, if you're storing materials, if we don't have a lot of public access back and forth, it creates tracking of sediment onto the street. So there's some flexibility there. So private streets, this is the section where we are proposing to reference exactly what's in the subregs. This is probably the pain point that we've heard through the meetings. Basically referencing the same widths. We've also just copied the sidewalk language over, and then that also includes streetlights. So we felt like we would be remiss if we didn't bring this up with the site development. So it is kind of a policy question related to sidewalks, streetlights, versus this accessibility and safety question. So here's an example I just kind of throw out for consideration. This was an existing private development between two public streets. So there's a private street sort of in the middle of this particular project. I'm not saying it's what we want to do, but it's something for consideration. It does have a sidewalk through the middle of it that sort of connects the units on the private street to the public streets. So with that, I think I'd like to leave you with some discussion. But before I get that, I want to acknowledge we had some feedback from Mr. Hill, I believe, in an email that was copied to you folks, basically saying with some of the curb cut ordinance, we need to add some more specifications, if you will. And I think we've addressed that in a couple ways, and I don't suggest changing the ordinance to reference some of the construction standards. Reason being, those standards change fairly frequently. The state comes up with new ones, and I think we have that better fit in other areas. Now, a couple weeks ago, we did make a change to I think there were some questions on folks with permits knowing what the standard was. We did add to our permit language that current specification. So I think we've done that in a different place, and that's more direct to those builders to know what those standards are. So happy to dig into that more, but I feel like we're addressing that. So with that, I wanted to see if there was some discussion. One of the pain points seems to be this question on private streets. Do we want sidewalks, streetlights? Is there a hybrid? Those kinds of things. So I'd open that up to questions on those items or any other questions on those curb cut changes.
Okay, Councilor, questions. Councilor Esmelader's had his yellow hand up for a while, so we'll recognize him, and Councilor Boyd, Councilor Bernice. So Councilor Esmelader, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And Mac, I appreciate the work that you've done here and in working with the consultant community and the development community. This is different, I think, for the better from where it initially started and kind of rolled out. And I think you've done a really good job of trying to find ways to incorporate comments and feedback from the development community and the engineering community. So I got two questions coming off of that. You noted in your presentation that developments that have traffic impact studies that are 10 years old or more are going to have a refresh. What exactly is a refresh in terms of what you're talking about? Is this a complete redo of a traffic study? Is this an upgrade to traffic counts? Like, where are we drawing the line? Because that's a pretty wide swath of what could be expected there.
Yeah, Councilmember Aspenlighter, Mayor and Council, great question. I think the intent would be to have some updates with adjacent traffic counts, if you will. That could probably be done with a memo, if you will.
Okay, so similar to change of use from an original, something similar to that would like we see with commercial development?
Yeah, and I suppose we could put some bounds on that, or some guide rails, if that was an idea there. You know what that means. I mean,
Yeah, for me personally, I think that would be helpful just so that we have some consistency down the line as to what's expected, and the development community can fully understand what they're getting themselves into. I think that would be helpful to beef that up a little bit as far as what you see as expectations there. My my second is not necessarily a question, it's just it's a comment, and it's been my comment kind of from the get-go on this curb cut ordinance update. I don't think that the curb cut ordinance is the place for us to eliminate private streets from being used in our city. I think that's like a larger policy level discussion that we should be having as a body. This, from my perspective, did not necessarily get the full attention or engagement of the development and consulting community, as it rolled through these curb cut ordinance updates, because I don't think developers fully understood that, hey, we're talking about maybe potentially eliminating private streets altogether. And I'm not going to advocate one way or the other tonight whether we should get rid of private streets or we shouldn't. But I think that should be a bigger conversation that's had by this body and not done in an ordinance update. And it's more in line with policy and things that we should be outlining in our subdivision regulations, and really bigger policy discussions, not necessarily in a curb cut ordinance, which doesn't necessarily lend itself initially to making you think that this is where you're going to look to find that we don't allow private streets anymore. So for me, I would like that the private streets discussion completely out of this curb cut ordinance, and for that to be something that we as a policy body discuss with Public Works as an entire package, whether we're going to do that or whether we're not, and not trying to do that as part of this private street, as part of this curb cut ordinance. I appreciate that you've presented us some options about what we could or could not, or hybrids to discuss, but I think this is a bigger level discussion for us as a policy body to have, outside of the curb cut ordinance. So, Mr. Mayor, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Raspletter. Mac, would you just clarify for us? I've seen what you're talking about with private streets, changed to sidewalks and street lights, but I guess I missed the possibility of eliminating private streets. How would that possibly happen under what you're proposing?
yeah, I don't think we have any. I don't think that's written in the code. I think from a staff perspective, this private streets, are generally under our site development ordinance. So we brought this discussion forward, whether or not they should, have these other elements or not. It's the council's pleasure whether that needs to be a separate conversation.
Okay, so elimination is not part of the document we have before us.
That's correct.
Okay, Councilmember Boya, Councilmember Neese, Councilmember Gula, Councilmember Rupsis.
Well, since one of the people who live on a private street, I think they're a disaster. To me, the builder builds cheap. They put no sidewalks, no curb and gutter, no nothing. Then the residents end up 10, 20 years later saying, well, boy, how am I going to fix this? I have to put money aside. I don't have the money for that. So if we, the council, we, the city, need to start thinking about eliminating private streets, period, in my opinion. So whatever we can do to facilitate that, I'm on your side. Thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Neese, Councilmember Gulick.
I'd like to defer to the engineer before I speak, because these guys know the
Okay.
This
Yeah.
better.
Councilmember Gulick, go ahead. We'll switch that order.
Well, I think Councilmember Asplander raised a good point in terms of I think it is a larger issue, and thank you for your perspective, Councilmember Boyette. And so I don't really have any thoughts too much on private streets, other than to say that if there aren't sidewalks. I would be open to it with a huge if, and that is if the, traffic isn't going more than 10 miles an hour. And so that's a lot of, that would take a lot to make that happen. But I did have a question on the curb cuts. I appreciate the photos. I was pleased to see that in the photos you provided, and both aerial as well as on the ground, that there was on-street parking. Does the and I apologize, I didn't get into the details. Do the spacing of the curb cuts, is there a minimum amount of spacing such that there would be on-street parking will always be possible? Because what I want to avoid is having so many curb cuts that you can't park on the street, and so then you suddenly have a street that people are driving 45 miles an hour on. Is the spacing, is there a minimum spacing that will allow for on-street parking?
Yes, and the current code also, I guess we reinforce that with the current code, and the current code says, hey, if I have I'm going to pick a 3-unit building, for example, and let's say the builder wanted 3 distinct drive approaches, we would say between these two you need 25 feet, between the other two, or the middle and the end, you need 25 feet. So theoretically for that 3-unit building, you'd have at least 2 on-street parking stalls there. And that was the photo that I tried to basically reinforcing this. This is an example of that, if you will.
Go ahead.
Pardon me. There was reference to curb cuts that are wider than 25 feet. When you get really wide, I don't like them is because it made pedestrians on sidewalks feel pretty threatened. They're exposed from cross traffic. What are the scenarios in which we would anticipate being using 20 or 36-foot wide curb cuts?
So the scenario there would be where we have a shared approach between like two. Let's say we have two buildings that are adjacent, and so rather than 2, in theory, sort of 24-foot adjacent, so we'd have 48 feet of driveway, if you will, for in your case the pedestrian walking across that. We would allow for a shared 36-foot approach. But the 36 only applies when we have a shared condition. You don't just get a 36-foot.
Okay, very good. Councilor Ripsis?
Thank you, Mayor.
Or I apologize, Councilor Bernice. I skipped over Councilor Bernice because he deferred.
I deferred, but Mac, on the one of the pictures you had up there was the corner curb cuts. So is that going to help eliminate these ball mounts that we see in subdivisions? Is that kind of what those are designed for?
I think it's a little bit of a different situation, but similar. So I'm going to answer your question, no, but I think it may aid in eliminating the bulb outs because then it does allow for this flexibility. So I can't necessarily assure that, but
okay,
I think
it could reduce it.
I think
maybe
it's trending. I think there's a
reduce.
possibility of trending what you're suggesting. Yes.
Okay, and then one of the concerns. First of all, I don't like private streets either. Because I've seen too many that, like as Councilmember Boyette described. However, I think there's a need for them, and so I guess I'm wondering. I mean, really, the factor is I understand is the developer is trying to keep the cost down, and so they find an area where they can develop and have private streets, and put them in, and the cost is going to be lower. So by changing this ordinance, before we change it to these private streets, I'd like to know how much we're adding to that cost of development, because we hear that all the time. Our government regulations are adding cost to development. So I'd like to hear what that development is before we say, yes, we're going to do something like this. And I do agree with Councilmember Spilliner on this. This is a regulation for, what does it say, ordinance for curb cut regulations. I think everything to do with private streets should be pulled out in a separate ordinance, separate number, saying private streets regulations, so that we have an actual indication of what, if we're gonna have private streets, as Councilmember Gulick said, maybe there's certain things you need to look for, 10 miles an hour, obstacles of developing through streets, things like that, that it would have the ability for developers to predict, know what it is they can do on private streets. And then when they have those private streets, what kind of things they can get away with not having. Maybe they don't need sidewalks, on both sides, or maybe they don't need street lights as much as they normally do. But I think we're going to require street lights for every residential area. We probably should require them on private streets as well, which that's something I disagree with. I don't think we should need them residential. But again, those are the kind of things I think it'd be best to pull this out of completely separate ordinance and allow people to consider what they have to do for curb cut development and then what they have to do for street development, whether it's private or public. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councilor Rips.
Thank you, Mayor. So Mac, based on this red line thing and looking at our existing code, we don't have any private seat references in the existing curb cut regulation code. There's nothing saying private streets have to be done this way or that way. So how does adding in some language here that says they're allowable in these conditions or whatever, it wouldn't possibly be eliminating them. If this doesn't get added in, what regulation reigns supreme? How would developers know what to develop?
Yeah, great question, Councilmember Aspenleiter, Mayor and Council. So, private streets are of course allowed today. Generally, we don't. They need paving and curb and those kinds of things, and then the widths generally are as they are in the subdivision regs, and that kind of goes back to fire. So the requirements or the discussion about sidewalks and streetlights, those are kind of the things at discussion here. Yeah. So if this did not have the elements related to sidewalks and streetlights, we would still have the ability to construct private streets as they are
but
today.
They would just be developed just like any other street to the same standards as any other street in the city.
Correct.
If 16 and 17 aren't included in. So what was the motivation to actually add those in this section then?
Just at this time, staff felt like it was a good discussion to have to, be consistent with the subdivision regulations with respect to sidewalks and streetlights. But there again, that being a policy decision.
But this is actually adding something in that's not consistent with the other streets, right?
Well, for residential streets, the subdivisions would require the sidewalks and the streetlights.
Yes, and so we're putting in, the staff is suggesting through 16 and 17, well, we don't say anything about lights there, but 16 and 17, we're saying you can have some different standards for streets and sidewalks than we include for regular city streets.
That's the same language that would be in the subdivision regulations that in 16 there.
Okay.
So 17, maybe there's some clarity there. 17 would say 17 is intended to cover not only private streets but parking lots, if you will, because 17 addresses the piece that got taken out of the code with recode.
Okay.
So that just says, hey, pave your parking lot, if you will.
All right. So nothing that you've actually written in here really says you can do anything different than every other regular street so far.
Correct.
So we're still going to have that higher level policy discussion at some point, assuming one of us doesn't say we want to put something in here tonight.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Mac, I'll make a few comments.
Scott's online.
And Councilmember Owen and Councilmember Aspenleiter then. 30,000 foot level, I'm personally nervous about getting rid of a dual sidewalk requirement on private streets or making any other changes for private streets purely because they're private street. Seems that these are engineering standards and ought to be driven by engineering considerations, safety, function, whatever that might be, not just by who owns the street. I understand maybe there's a goal to make these cheaper, but I'm concerned that that consideration applies to public streets as well. So I'm not quite sure why we would draw the line. And once we go down that path, I'm concerned about the precedent it would create. So that's the high level. I'll make a few other comments just about drafting issues. You don't have to comment on any of these if you don't want to, but I'll just make a record and you can go back and listen to this later if you to follow up. I just note that the language on pages 4 and 5 talking about 36-foot streets says that 36-foot streets, and I guess this is pages 4 and 5, I'm sorry, that certain streets width are allowed. A 36-foot driveway width is allowed. Okay, so what? You know, that just means there's one exact dimension that's allowed. Doesn't mean that's a maximum or a minimum. I think we just need language that clarifies, is that the maximum? Is that a minimum? Or is that the only width that is allowed? And then on page 8, there's a reference to, in paragraph 16, says private streets that serve more than 5 residential dwelling units, and there's certain requirements. Just, I think we need some clarification of what it means to serve residential dwelling units. We know that with state law, for example, you can have a mother-in-law apartment, which is a dwelling unit on any, so does that mean that those get counted, even though they don't exist? But they could, theoretically. So I think we'd have to be more clear about what it means to serve or potentially serve, how you count those number of units, because that becomes very clear or very important in this case. Page 9, there is in subparagraph J1, a sentence at the end that says, for example, the city may require curb cut access to a local access street. And I think this deals with the situation where you've got a corner, and I think the intent is to the city may only require, or may require that the only access be on that, not may require that, but it doesn't then clarify what's happening on the arterial side. So if that's the intent, we just want to be clear about that. And then on page 10, where it talks about the appeal process for administrative relief, or whatever under administrative relief, it allows an appeal to the governing body, namely the city council. I'm not really sure that you want us weighing in on this level of detail in the appeal process. And so you may consider whether there should be some sort of intermediate level of appeal to somebody else, in particular the city administrator, perhaps, before it gets its way to the city council. So those are just some overall comments. You're welcome to comment if you want to, but I just want to get those on the record. Before we recognize Councilmember Owen and Aspenlider, Shaw, and Gulick. Councilmember Owen, sure.
Mayor, just real briefly, Mac, thank you for recognizing the extensive input from Mr. Hill. He sent an email earlier today recommending a few very specific suggestions that I think you recommended against. Would you do me and the other council members the courtesy of responding in writing, just so that I can see some of this gets a little garbled for me? And if you would just respond to his suggestions in writing as to why you think they're not necessary or where they've been addressed otherwise, that would really help me kind of process this going forward.
Yeah, and it's not I will follow up in writing there. It's not in total disagreement. I think it's about where that information resides in different codes.
Perfect. There's just no chance I'm going to track that unless I see it in writing. So thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Aspenlider and Shaw.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to clarify, like, when I say we're eliminating private streets, we're not technically eliminating private streets, but we're essentially making private streets built to public street standards with all of the public street requirements. And at that point, you don't have private streets anymore, because there's no reason to have them be private unless you're going to live in a gated community. At that point, you just make it a public street, and you and I and all the rest of the taxpayers get to pay for those, just like we pay for all the other streets. So when we put these restrictions on private streets to be built in full to Billings residential standards, there's really no reason to ever have private streets. So it's in essence, you're backdooring the construction of a private street to provide any kind of benefit. And I'll give you some context on that. On an 80 unit, kind of master site development where you have roughly 60-foot frontages per unit, the cost on that for sidewalks and streetlights alone is $410,000. I'm saying this as the guy that voted for streetlights, right? In our subdivision regs. But the cost for sidewalks and streetlights alone is about $410,000 for that 80 unit subdivision. So what you've done there is add about $5,000 per unit, per door, to the construction cost. That's not nothing in the scope of, trying to create a affordable housing, which we refer to all the time. And then we do stuff like this, where we just add more cost. And the real question is, what's the actual value? I mean, they're not that I've ever seen. There are no statistics that say that crime is greater on private streets than they are on public streets. There's no statistics that say that, Forest Park, which doesn't have sidewalks, is any less safe than Ironwood or other communities that have sidewalks. There's nothing like that. I mean, these are all insinuations and things that we're trying to create in our mind to say, hey, yeah, wouldn't it be nice if just everybody had this opportunity? But we neglect the fact to take into consideration that stuff all costs money. So, those are some rough numbers just for sidewalks and streetlights alone. On a development like that, you're talking about $5,000 per door. That's not a couple $100. That moves the needle on affordable housing in our community, and we just need to be cognizant of that. I'm happy to have this as a greater conversation, but it does not seem to me to fit in this curb cut ordinance. So I'll quit belaboring the point tonight.
Very good. Thank you.
Now it's 10:30 here.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Let's move along quickly. Councilmember Shaw, Councilmember Gulick.
Thank you. You asked for specific directions, so I will add my voice to those that believe we should have sidewalks and streetlights on all streets. To me, they're essential. There's also a number of statistics that say the vast majority of us will have some accessibility problem at some point in our lives. And so these kind of investments are investing in the unknown in some ways of who's going to end up in a wheelchair. Somebody here will at some point, and will need access to sidewalks and will need streetlights because they have kids. And so I won't belabor it, but there are accessibility and safety issues that I think are absolutely critical. And I understand the cost issue. I get it. But to me, this is a non-negotiable thing.
Very good. Councilmember Gulick?
Good discussion on this private street stuff, and I'll say it again. I think it is another topic for a bigger discussion. I wholeheartedly agree with Councilmember Shaw on public streets. However, I am very open to in terms of the issue of affordability. If you have, to the mayor's point, the right safety standards, and to Councilmember Boyette's, the right engineering standards for durability and whatnot, I am open to discussions about something quite a bit less expensive, where like the Dutch notion of the Woonerf, which is a street where people, it's like basically the street is a big sidewalk that you can drive on, essentially, and people drive at a very slow and I think that could be a way of bringing some real affordability to more housing options. And so I'm certainly open to discussion like that. I think would cut down the number of streetlights needed, and so it's something quite different than we have right now in our regs. But I think it could achieve a lot of the benefits we're looking for. And it's not just a way of cheaping out. It's actually just doing a really good quality thing, but it's quite different than what we have now. So
Very good. Further discussion, we'll try to wrap up soon. Councilor Bernice?
Yeah, Mayor, Mac, I have a question if you don't mind, because I thought I heard you say, that everything that's in this private streets is already in our subdivision regulations now. I'm understanding that correctly. You said there's nothing new here on what private streets are treated today as versus what's in here now, but I think that I hear is, no, that's not correct. So it sounds to me like this is a change.
That's correct.
Okay. So what is changing on private streets?
So two things I'm going to say. You can do private streets today, no question. The two, I would say, major changes, if you will, proposed are, the question over sidewalks and streetlights. Those are not currently required for private streets.
Okay. So would it be hard to just pull all the private streets out of this current ordinance and put it to a separate ordinance, and that one we wrestle with and get this one that need to be passed, or that passed? Because it sounds to me like there's a lot of discussion around private streets, but private streets doesn't have to be in this curb cut ordinance, does it?
It could be treated separately.
It can be.
Yes.
All right. So I guess that would be my recommendation. If you're looking for direction, I would make the motion to direct staff to split these two into two separate ordinances so that we can address those separately. There's a second, and that gives staff direction.
Okay, that was a motion in the form of a motion?
To direct staff, yeah.
I'll second that.
And second by Councilor Rassenleiter. Okay. If I can just ask Mac to kind of comment on that. I think we get the concept. It is. I think most of us would agree with Councilor Rassenleiter. It's a big deal, right? So we don't want it to somehow slip through. But wouldn't there be some ramifications in these curb cut ordinance? Is it an all or nothing decision about where this goes?
I think I think we could come back with some options on how to, keep the meat of this going, if you will, and bring the policy question over, sidewalks and streetlights on private streets on a separate element.
Okay. That's the intent.
Anyway, yeah, and Mayor, I think that Councilmember Gulick brings up some good ideas, that there's a lot of things about private streets we don't know that we probably want to consider in a private street ordinance to give developers better prediction of how they're going to develop their private streets, and give them better options that they may find that would be beneficial for their development. So I hope that we move forward on that so we can actually talk about those things and bring all those different ideas here.
Okay, discussion on the motion, Councilmember Shaw?
I'm not opposed to it, but I guess my question to you, Mac, is why would we not want to do that? Why did you bring it to us all as one package instead of splitting it up? If you kind of knew that was the deeper discussion, why did you include it this way?
I think we would be remiss if we didn't. These are the tough decisions, from a policy standpoint. So we decided to bring it forward.
But to be clear, you don't have a problem with splitting it. That's not going to add like 100 extra hours to your work or something.
No, in my opinion, that just kind of delays that conversation, but maybe we need some more detail on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, we'll proceed to a vote. Motion is clear. In favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Is opposed, nay. I guess that motion passes unanimously also, so okay. Council, what else? We're not going to be able to go through every one of these items, but if there's especially big issues, or maybe I should ask Mac. You had things in your mind that you wanted direction or clarification on. Can you highlight for us before we drop into some group of weeds what you want from us tonight, if you can?
I mean, I think the big one was the big ones were talked about on the private streets. I think we've been through input from the development community and builders, we've kind of hammered out the 1 foot, 2 foot micro issues, if you will, at this point. There could be some new ones that come up, but
okay. All right. Anything else? There's we had it at the beginning, but we had it at the beginning. And Mac, do you have any reason to think there's somebody here tonight who would like to comment on this despite the earlier? Doug? Okay. All right. If nobody objects, go ahead.
And so we worked, I think in general, what they've come up with is great. I think it matches our current zoning. I think it allows for the density and affordability that we're trying to achieve. I'm really glad you guys have motioned to pull the private streets out of the curb cut. I never thought it belonged there. The thoughts on the private streets, though, I think that private streets are important. I think that they should be allowed to be built to how we want to build them, not have to follow the city regulations, or the city street requirements. Some of the benefits to a private street, it allows more density. If I have to have a 34-foot wide street, which sometimes you need for fire safety, sometimes you don't need quite that much, but then I have to have a boulevard walk on both sides of that street, and then I lost 20 additional feet of usable property. So it's not just the cost of the sidewalk, it's not just the cost of the street light, but I mean, so Councilmember Aspenlighter mentioned, that's $5,000 a unit. Well, it's probably now I lost probably 5 units. And so it's a much bigger number. And so if we're trying to reach affordability and density, we need that tool in our tool belt to be able to explore. I think a private street that he showed a picture of one that connected a public street to another public street, and there was a sidewalk access, honestly not great access between two public streets. I don't think that's a good use of a private street. But I think like those private streets in Forest Park out in the front that Councilmember Boyette doesn't love, that's a private street. But I think that's a perfect use of a private street. It doesn't go anywhere. It goes in and it serves those units. It's not for public use. It's not meant for public transportation. It serves the people that live just there. And so I think that's the benefit and use of a private street. If you think about like an apartment complex, and you've got a building over here and a building over there and a building over here, and you've got a small road that kind of winds between those and breaks into parking lots. And then maybe there's grassy spaces, but if that road has to be 45 feet wide with boulevard walks and everything else, or 50 feet wide, it makes that property a lot harder to develop. I think as you do explore that private street conversation, I mean, maybe put reins on where private streets are okay, but I don't think put reins on what private streets are, if that makes sense. That's all. And I'm shut that.
Very good. Thank you, Doug. And yeah, you said something that I had noticed too. The example of that was really a pass-through street between two public streets, and it didn't make a lot of sense to me to eliminate sidewalks on something that's obviously going to be used by lots of people in the public and doesn't really function as a public street or as a private street. Sorry. Okay. Other discussions before we go to item number 2, so special presentation number 2. Mac, I guess you got what you need, at least for now. Council, I would encourage you, there's a lot of detail in here. It's a prime opportunity to send emails with more specific questions, more specific suggestions on the exact language, and that will speed up our process when it comes back to us for either approval or our next work session type discussion. Okay, we'll call that a wrap on item number 2, and or on item special presentation item number 1. And go to special presentation number 2, our transportation corridor plan update, and Debbie is going to lead us through that. Debbie.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this item is simply an update. You will see a contract with a consultant for consent coming up, and we knew that there was probably going to be more conversation around it than a consent item would normally warrant. So we just are bringing it tonight to give you a quick update and see if you have any questions before you see that contract. So this has taken us a little bit longer to get to this point than we expected it to. Council members Rupsis, Aspenlighter, and Gulick have been part of a committee that involves city administration, planning, public works, and transit. And maybe it's the size of our committee talking about it that's taken this long to get here, but no, I think our committee has been great. I think what has taken us a little bit of time to get here is we keep asking now, what are we not doing now that this is going to provide? And at the end of the day, what this is going to provide us is, we think, we need to ask our community clearer and simpler questions of what do you want our transportation system to look like? What do you value? What do you want it to look like when you commute? What does it look like for you? So I think the biggest effort that we have in this scope of work that you will see is that outreach piece. So I'm going to talk just for a couple of seconds about what we hope to get, and then Sarah Plath, who is the engineer on this project, is going to talk about the scope items that are in this contract that you'll see. So you have all seen this before. The master plan is really, or corridor plan we're calling it, is really something that will help us to put our goals as a community in a well-documented one spot where we can really say what we value the most and then plan around that in the future. The other big component of it will be that land use and transportation piece. We all know that's connected very closely, and so we want to make sure that we look into that further as to what our street sections and our typologies will encourage types of land use and how those tie together. Again, these were examples we've talked about previously where we can really put our city a very skeletonized look at our transportation system that says if you're on a bike, how do you get from A to B, east to west, north to south? If you are using transit, how do you get north to south, east to west? If you're in a car, and such and such. And so we're going to try to put together these skeletonized maps for different modes of transportation and then describe what those corridors look like. Again, I'm going really fast through this because you've all seen them, but what does a corridor look like that truly is for a bike? What does a corridor look like that is very pedestrian friendly? What does a corridor look like that maybe does all of them? Not all of them have to do everything. So again, we're going to look at those different types of corridors. And then we hope to get to a point where we actually are looking at how those like pedestrian priority zones could work through our community and what they would look like. And then Sarah's going to talk a little bit about typology, what that would mean, what we would get out of a study giving us typology examples, and then she's going to go into the scope.
Hello. Okay, so with the typologies, what we're really looking to do is provide additional guidance for probably our arterials and our collector streets on our typical sections or typologies. Street typologies are meant to provide clarification on the purpose and design elements of a street. So that can be really general. What's on the screen here is an example of kind of general guidance for a different community, what they've put together for arterial streets. So they have really general pedestrian, traffic calming, bicycle, median, and transit guidance. They can also be more specific. So this example here is from the city of St. Louis. They went through an effort to put together a document that created all these different street typologies for their arterial streets. And so in this example here, you can see on the left, they kind of have a visual of what that street typology looks like. And then on the right, they have the different modal priorities. They have different tools that are applicable given which typology or which street you're on. They have guidance for right-of-way, what type of vehicle levels, average daily traffic it can support, and then also guidance on vehicle lanes. So you'll see in this example, this is prioritized for vehicles in transit. In this next example, this would be an example of a street that's prioritized for pedestrians and bicycles. So you can really see based off of just the elements of the roadway, how they serve different uses, how they would fit in different contexts. And that's really what we're trying to get at. If you think of like Rimrock Road and 24th Street West, those are both arterial roads, and we don't really have any guidance to differentiate between those two, but they act very different. They serve different uses. So that's really what we're trying to get at. So with this scope of work, this first phase is really focused on community outreach and technical analysis. We would hope to come back a little bit later with the phase 2 scope of work that would actually develop the transportation corridor plan. So phase 1 is really focused on outreach. this project is going to be led by city staff, led by myself and other city staff, and assisted by the consultant. So what we need assistance with really boils down to a handful of items related to that community engagement and the technical assistance. So for community engagement, we really want to focus on visuals, renderings, maps, different graphics that can help people understand what we're talking about, because it's a little bit hard to grasp until you see a picture and you're like, oh yeah, okay. So we have a lot of pieces in our scope that cover the visual component. We also are hoping our consultant will help us with the in-person engagement. That would be, planning and attending open houses, also helping us cover community events. But with that in mind, those would be more than likely always staffed by, or always also city staff would be there as well. So it wouldn't be entirely consultant. We really want the city to be the face of this. There's probably some assistance with online engagement as well. And then on the technical side, helping us work through concept development, modeling if we need it, traffic modeling if we need it, and then just general traffic engineering support. So our schedule, we're hoping to bring a contract to you as soon as we can. That would probably be in May or June, that we would bring that contract to council. As soon as we have that contract in place, we'd hope to move into community engagement. That we're thinking will take us all the way through the year, maybe even into the first part of 2026. We've identified a couple key events that we know we want to be at, through the summer, but we're also hoping to, we'll definitely be at more events than just those listed there. So we'll identify those, we'll attend those. And then we're also planning on doing some more targeted neighborhood outreach. So with the neighborhood task force, or maybe attending events that are specific to different parts of town. We would bring a final summary presentation to you all sometime in early 2026 once we've completed the outreach, just to tell you all what we found, and then would move into phase 2, which would be the actual development of the transportation corridor plan, and hope to have that plan completed, work on that through 2026 and completed end of 2026 or early 2027. So with that, that's all we have. If you want to, we don't have the scope of work finalized, and so now would be the time to give us input if there's anything in particular. Also, we can answer questions.
Very good. Questions for Sarah or Debbie? I'm going to start with one, and then Councilmember Shaw and Owen. Sarah, having being as old as the hills and seeing lots of these things come through, a lot of the community outreach is it's not so broad-based as to be statistically valid. It harvests people who are motivated to give you their opinion, right? And even if that opinion is excellent opinion, even if it's broadly based in the community, it's suspect because of the way it was gathered. And we just don't trust it as much. And maybe that's our fault. So when we have a real statistically valid survey, it's about $30,000, and it's very limited, to what's your questions. It's hard to repeat. It doesn't work very well. So we're really caught between a rock and a hard place. My question is, and you don't have to have an answer to this, but my encouragement would be that Public Works, who gets involved with a lot of these and sometimes has more access to funding, in my opinion, needs to find some middle way, some hybrid that's better than those two extremes. And specifically, I would encourage us to look at social media-based email surveys where you get a group of email addresses, because nobody picks up the phone anymore. Nobody has hardline phones anymore to pick up. And you send out your surveys to them, and then you try to normalize it for their demographics to make sure that the group is ultimately representative of the whole community. Qualtrics specializes in doing this. They have office based in Utah. They have a whole division that's devoted to serving government, and it's a lot less expensive. It's not cheap, but it's $5,000 or $10,000 to do this rather than $30,000. So that's be my piece, not just for this exercise, but we need to learn how to do this better because this problem comes up every time we go out and ask the public, right? I apologize. Who had their hands up? Councilmember Shaw, Councilmember Rowan, Councilmember Neese. Councilmember Shaw.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I really like the typology of streets work. I haven't seen that before, I don't think, in a study or plan. I think that's really valuable. I'm struggling with the spine network piece only because I feel like then I'm going to go back to the pedestrian bicycle plan that we did not adopt the update on, but that steering committee spent a lot of time working on exactly that for the pedestrian bicycle world. So I'm really hesitant about spending money to duplicate work. I don't think that's staff's intention at all. What have the discussions been around that? How is that going to be incorporated? Because that's my sticking point.
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. Yeah, the one thing I will add to that is the modal corridors in my mind are really meant to tell you where that mode is prioritized above another mode. So it doesn't mean that's the only place that these things are going to be, but if we can identify a road as being like we're going to prioritize vehicles above the other modes on this corridor, there's probably a handful of those that we can identify pretty easily. Same idea goes with the bicycle corridors and transit and pedestrian, and then there's probably quite a few of these multimodal where we can accomplish a bit more. So it's more about that priority and not so much about this is the only place that these different people are moving around. Yeah, I'm not sure if I totally addressed your comment.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that totally answers my question.
I'll add one more thing then.
Okay.
We will use all the plans that are out there. I mean, I think all the work that was done on the bike and ped plan, we're going to use a lot of that because there was a lot of looking at those things. But I think exactly what Sarah said, not every street needs to be the same for everyone. And so the difference between, I think, what we've done in the past and we'll continue to do because it's how we look at our network. In this one, we really are looking at prioritizing. So instead of, I think 24th is a great example. 24th is an arterial, and we know it's an arterial, and it's an arterial right now for everything and everyone. And we want to say a bike arterial's over here, a transit arterial's over here, and a vehicular arterial's over here. So that's where it changes. Like she said, prioritization above modes, above other modes on those streets. So that's how it's a little bit different.
I get that. And it's very valuable. It just to me feels like we're duplicating work. And so that scope, I'm concerned about it. I'll just put that out there. I'm concerned about it.
Okay. Councilmember Rowan?
Thank you, Mayor. I need to ask a couple of clarifying questions because I thought I understood what we were accomplishing here, but then what Debbie said just puzzled me. So is the goal to create for arterials and corridors these actual sub-classifications? Debbie had communicated it almost by, sorry, I don't know who to look at here. Oh, you had communicated it, Debbie, almost as a type of, well, yeah, sorry, you're flipping and I'm going to let you get to where you need to get to. Okay, so I get the idea of saying vehicles go here, bike or whatever, but what's in the typologies are actually almost development-oriented subclassifications. Is that what we're driving towards?
Yes. So when you look at these corridor examples, on something like this, you can see the different corridors are all discussed as far as, a type number 1 is a street principal arterial for cars. Type number 4 is something different. So it puts all that together and it says all these corridors are different. So a 24th is not a Rimrock Road.
Right.
Both arterials, that's all we have right now is arterial, collector, local.
But
we're going to have more.
I'm looking at the other pages, these kind of cooler graphic pages with the Gateway Corridor, the Main Street Suburban. Are we driving towards something like that is really about how it connects to the type of development almost?
There will be a land use component to this. So yes, we're trying to combine the two.
Okay.
We're not sure how far we can get with what
Sure.
we have, but
Yeah.
this is our goal is to get to a point where, yes, we are tying land use. Again, Rimrock and 24th are perfect. They're completely different land uses, completely different roads. And we're trying to categorize more what those would look like.
Okay, and that drives to my last technical question, try to understand this. Are we going to use this as a tool for future roads, or are we going to reclass existing arterials and corridors as well?
I think both.
Okay.
So existing roads get rebuilt quite often. Grand Avenue and Rimrock are both great examples of what will be rebuilt in the next 5 years. Also, as developments occur, sometimes we'll rebuild a stretch of road. And we also look at, adding multi-use trails. Sometimes we have to take a lane out. I'd use Grand Avenue from 16th to 24 as a great example. I don't think anybody thinks that street works well for anything right now. Cars, people, bikes, it doesn't matter. So do we rebuild that someday? And if we do, where does it fit?
Okay.
So I think it's new and existing.
That helps. So then I just want to share my comment, which is I would just ask as we're developing this to think about this not just as a tool for kind of the public works and development communities, but a general public education tool. Because I think if people could say, oh, this collector or this arterial is meant to be a gateway corridor or a residential arterial or something, then as they try to get their heads around what a traffic impact study will look like and what the traffic actually means with this development, we start to give people some tools to understand new development in different ways. So I would just hope we could keep that public education and public empowerment opportunity in mind as we're developing final products.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Kulik. No? Okay. Councilmember Boyette. Oh, and Councilmember Bernice. And then we'll try to wrap up because it's almost 11 o'clock. Councilmember Boyette.
So we haven't had a good track record with plans lately, but if this goes ahead, does this mean that 5 years from now, we will have to build something according to this plan? Or is this a wish list for the future? Because I don't see us spending a lot of money 5 years from now any more than we are today, doing something out of bounds.
So the intent with the plan is that it would be provide some guidelines, but not necessarily design any street a certain way. So it'll provide guidance. It'll leave it flexible enough to where we can, evaluate in the future as road projects come up, what the needs are at that time based off of what we hear through this effort. So it'll really be, I can't harp enough on the community aspect of this. We really want to hear what the community wants to see, set some guidelines that are appropriate based off of that feedback, and in the larger picture of our transportation network, and then, projects would move forward from there.
Very good. Councilmember Bernice.
Thank you, Mayor. What is this plan going to cost?
So that's one of the things we are working through right now. Sub $200,000, but we haven't landed on that number yet. So somewhere
That's
in the
just the consultant's cost?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and then lots of staff time involved in something like this? And so this is a tool that you would expect to have created that, your example, like Rimrock and 24th are different. They're still arterials, but they're two different types, A and B or whatever they are. Mm-hmm. And then as something triggers within one of those, like on Rimrock, a certain section then changes to something like 24th would be. That's where how the tool is? You kind of these streets will develop over time into different types of arterials or residential and stuff like that.
I think I'm understanding your question. So I think there's opportunity for that, and if you look at some of our road corridors, they do change today even. So it's so I think there's opportunity for that to be flexible, but the idea here is that we're kind of identifying the guidance for these roadways based off of what we hear from the community right now. But as we'll try to leave it flexible to where it can meet the needs of the growth as the growth occurs. Did that answer okay?
It does, yeah. So these road types are already out there, so we can go to any city website and probably see a combination of these different type of roads and say, well, this probably fits this road or that road within our city, and adopt that ourselves if we so choose. So I'm concerned that we're going to spend $200,000. I mean, as the mayor pointed out, a lot of these plans go through these studies and have people who are invited, and I'm looking at your list of here, it's more of an echo chamber of response. And so we're not getting a valid response, and it makes it really difficult to approve something like this. And so I'm concerned that we're going to spend $200,000 and then come back and say it didn't turn out well. I know we got some council members on the board, which is helpful.
Yeah.
But how do we know? I mean, how do we know this is really going to be a cross section of the public?
Mm-hmm.
I like the mayor's idea about just random, emails out. There's no one. You're not picking and choosing from one group or another. You're just sending it out, stuff like that. But it does cost money, and I would hope it's part of this $300,000.
Yeah. So I'll address a couple things there. So one thing that we've talked about extensively is that we want to meet people where they are, not just assume that they're going to come to us at these events. And so I think that's one of the things that we really dive into once we get our consultant under contract is, identifying where it is that we need to go to meet people where they are. We've talked about, going into different places of work that maybe have a lot of employees there so we can reach as many people as we can and, in one outreach effort, not just, having an open house and saying, well, here's what we heard, but really going and reaching people where they are. The other part that I'll add is that we did put into our current scope of work right now, we have an item in there that we'll work with our consultant to identify some metrics to kind of say we need this many unique responses about this item before we feel comfortable moving on. And so we don't have those identified yet. That'll be part of our scope of work with our consultant, but we will identify some of those metrics. So we're not just stopping when we feel like it. We have some guidance on, when we feel like we've gotten enough feedback to move on to the next topic.
Okay, and then do you know where those $200,000 is coming from?
So there's some planning funds available, and gas tax will be used for the rest of it.
So gas tax and planning funds. Okay.
Right.
And then maybe Wyatt can answer this, but how does this relate with this study that we just approved tonight about the $45,000 for the MPO? Doesn't that kind of cross this as well a little bit as far as costs and how it impacts this whole complete street type of a program?
Councilmember Neese and Mayor and Council, I guess a couple things in terms of what we have right now with our complete streets policy that was adopted in 2011 and the council and the city has used for many years. Looks also at sort of when Public Works does a design or reconstruction and looks at 30% and looks at the different elements. Some of that happens through that policy. And right now as of right now, we're still we're under that policy in this situation. So I think partly, hopefully, what we would be able to get to with this is in a couple of years, when this would be complete, we'd be able to then say, okay, how does this inform, or how do they inform each other to say, maybe, do we still need that policy? Do we have this instead? I don't know, but I think that's where we'd have to assess that. But we're a couple of years potentially out on this. So in the meantime, we're still trying to adapt and adjust and make sure we're moving forward with with what we have now. And I guess, that's also a concern, I think, in general, is if we're a couple of years out, there's things that are going to happen between now and then. So we're going to have to figure out kind of how to walk that balance beam already between this effort and all the things that are going on in the interim. But I think the idea would be to see how those fit or don't fit together and make adjustments.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Wyatt. Thank you, Debbie. Anything else before we wrap up, Debbie?
Can I just add one thing? To Councilmember Neese's comment or question, I want to make sure we're starting this the right way. This was a conversation we had at a retreat. We have discussions at every design. Every time I bring a road project here, we have conversations about, should we have bike lanes? Should we have sidewalks? Should we have trails? Should we have a lane? Should we not have a lane? I don't want to have those at design anymore. And so this is this is how this started, was our conversation saying, we all got to hear what our community says. We all have to decide what we want to build, and then we'll build it every time. So that's what this is. If the council doesn't want to attack it this way, that's why we're here. We want to know that. This is our attempt to attack this issue.
Very good, Debbie, and I think we support it and appreciate the idea of trying to specialize with streets rather than trying to make a street the street for everybody.
Right.
Because when you do that, as you said with 24th, nobody's happy, right? So even if you have to go over a block or two or whatever, let's try to classify that. That makes sense to me. The only thing I would suggest is that there are hundreds, thousands of communities in our country. They all have cars and they have the same traffic problems, right? So this ought to be something that we can learn a lot from those other communities. I appreciate some of your examples were already being taken from other communities. Let's not reinvent this wheel. Let's try to learn from people who've already spent a lot of their money and experience, and then refine that. So that would be my advice. So, okay, council, it's after 9 o'clock. I say we go home. Is that okay? Okay, then that a wrap on number 2. Council initiatives. Then we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your patience. See you next week.